With the Butt Kicker Gamer 2, what you see and what you hear is what you feel. Butt Kicker. The future is feeling.
The run of technical circuits continues tonight for the GR86 series as they visit the newly added and highly difficult Aschersleben Speedway. All of that takes place as the story continues to be at the top of the field, where our three championship contenders continue to stretch their gap over the rest of their competitors while fiercely tussling in and amongst themselves. Hello everyone and welcome to the PRL Monday Night Series, brought to you here live on RaceSpotTV. My name is DJ Clark, joined at the commentary booth by Arjuna Kankapati, who's also on directing and producing duties here tonight. And Arjuna, Aschersleben is, well, it's one of those newer circuits here on the service, but it's already picked up a pretty fierce reputation as one that punishes mistakes and where overtaking is difficult to come by.
Yeah, and even in these GR86s, which always put on a fantastic show, we've come from Scuba where it was slightly difficult. Well, head over to a track where it's even more difficult. And of course, turn one is a corner etched in motorsports and broadcasting folklore, thanks to some very creative words from a commentator. But it's got corners that flow into faster corners that flow into slower corners. So it's one of those tracks where if there are mistakes, there will also be opportunities, which are important as we wind to the end of a championship.
Yeah, indeed, as you take a look at that championship, there are only 3 rounds left to go after tonight. Alton Park, Road America, and then ending the season at another new tricky circuit in the form of Rudskogen. But let's go ahead and bring you to our championship order here. As we kind of hinted at, a big breakaway at the front of the field. Barrios and Atacones starting to separate themselves over Kevin Sandiego, and indeed only 1 point separating Barrios from Atacones, so we're going to have to keep an eye on the course of the two of them over the course of the night. From there on back, it's Patrick Farrell, kind of in a little bit of no man's land, with Jonathan Dam in a pretty close conversation with Andrew Sharp and Michael Chase. Aaron Law involved in that as well, Gerard Farewell and Rob Campbell. We also have a teams championship in order, and up at the top it is Dark Horse Esports, followed by YS Motorsports, with Dark Horse holding a nearly 50-point advantage of the rest of the field. Red Tip Factory Racing Team, led by Justin Atacones, sits in third place with a healthy gap over Walking Pace Racing. But Walking Pace finds themselves in pretty close competition here with Unlimited Slip, and then URF Motorsports not too far behind them. Crikey Esports finds themselves in second, Precision Racing Esports, Moonlight Speed, Lunatic Racing, and RSH Motorsports rounding out your top 10. Some good battles up and down through the field. But before we get to the qualifying action here tonight, we'd like to thank our sponsors for tonight's event, namely the VCO, the virtual competition organization without which none of our PRL action would be possible. So a massive thank you to them. We'd also like to thank Advanced Sim Racing. Owned and operated by passionate sim racers, Advanced Sim Racing designs and builds the sturdiest and most durable aluminum profile racing simulation cockpits available in the market today. All PRL members also get a 5% discount code on ASR products using the Precision 5 coupon code. Thanks as well to Racebox Sim Racing. Racebox offers mid and high-end button boxes for sim racing enthusiasts, from the casual gamer up to the most meticulous sim racing driver. Competitively priced and carefully handcrafted, their button boxes are an enjoyable addition to any sim racing setup. Visit Racebox Sim Racing and get a 5% discount using the Precision 5 coupon code. Thanks as well to RaceLab apps. RaceLab helps you to improve your driving skills. With modern overlays, race statistics, and native VR integration, you can get the best out of iRacing. Start using it now for free at racelab.app. Thanks as well to the Butt Kicker, whose products provide incredible immersion and realism to every game. Feel every nuance and truly put yourself into the driver's seat. Also thanks to Mecha Sim Hardware. They're a small company from the Czech Republic, and their goal is to produce high-quality sim racing hardware. If you are looking for high-end pedal sets, a handbrake, or sequential shifter, visit Mecha Sim Hardware's eShop right now to get you up to speed. And finally, thanks to Ninja Trader. Ready to compete against the financial markets? Supporting over 60,000 users across the globe, Ninja Trader provides award-winning trading software and brokerage services. Ninja Trader is always free to use for advanced charting, backtesting, and trade simulation. Visit ninjatrader.com to get started with a risk-free trading simulator and start tracking your performance. Well, Arjuna, with the business of the day concluded, we can get to the racing action out on track. And by racing, I, of course, mean qualifying here. A 4-lap solo qualifying session for all of these drivers as they work their way around. And I've got to think qualifying going to be pretty crucial here for these drivers, as we've already mentioned, very difficult to get an overtake done around here today.
And like I mentioned earlier, turn 1, notorious for a little bit of chaos and drama, so important to be at the front so that you can hopefully stay out of the thick of the action and at least preserve your car for the opening lap of the race. Of course, pit stops do mean that, of course, with limited fuel, that there will be a slight window in which the track's going to get more congested, of course, expecting maybe a bit of a breakaway at the front of the field with some of our championship storytellers, and then those further back trying to stay with them. Ultimately, qualifying is one of those final opportunities in this series, DJ, to get your rhythm and get up to speed with the race ready to go.
Yeah, it certainly is, and especially around a tricky track like this, that rhythm is going to be very, very crucial as we ride on board with one of those championship hopefuls here, Mariano Barrios, coming down through the Shell S. Now, that could be a point of overtaking on the course of the schedule, but we'll have to see here. Brings it now down through the right-hander that leads down into that final curve that brings us back out onto the main straightaway here of Germany's third oldest permanent facility in terms of road racing, behind only the Nürburgring and Hockenheim. We've already got some times getting their way onto the board, as there you see Mariano Barrios crossing over the line and setting down a 1:37.381, about 2.5 tenths ahead of Justin Adakonis and Marlon McMullen. That's a pretty big gap here.
At a track this technical at times, maybe not entirely surprising, it's the delta through the field that is the more shocking thing. We saw some close times in practice, and I have a feeling that maybe just some drivers on the very limit, as we watch Andrew Moran in the 99 almost find his way a little too far off the limits of the track. 4 laps, like you mentioned earlier, DJ, so you do have the opportunity to build up the rhythm as well, and these are rhythm cars.
Yeah, they certainly are, and as we've seen, no tire changes taking place over the course of the racing as opposed to the MX-5 series last time, so expect all these drivers to go out and try to put their 4 laps down as quickly as possible. Matthew Wegener now coming out of the final curve right now. He will come across the line. Let's see where that 897 is going to end up on the charts. That's going to be good enough for P9, right in the thick of that field. You mentioned, Arjuna, just how close it was. I'm looking at Kwok Nim, Buddy Chamberlain, Derek Putnam, and Wegener. They're very, very close running in that mid-pack.
Yeah, there's the look at some of the intervals. 8,000 splits 5th and 6th, as we now see Chamberlain able to jump his way up into 5th position. Putnam not going to see an improvement, and he'll dive back down on towards the pit lane. But more and more cars coming across the line. It's in the heart of the pack where we're really, I think, going to see most of the fighting. Still waiting for someone to get close to Barrios' time of a 37.381.
Yeah, still waiting for that. Marlon McMullen is pulled back down into pit lane as Richard Swindells is only going to find himself in 10th. There's Andrew Sharp with a good time coming up into P4 as we take another look here at Matthew Wegener, bringing his way onto the back half of the circuit. Now it's going to be Jonathan Dam, who's been able to get a couple of good qualifying times down here, and again, he's going to put another good one on the board, that one up to 4th place.
Yeah, nicely places himself to have another crack at it maybe on the final lap. Not sure how the tires will work out in the course of the run, so maybe now you'll back out of it for a lap and set yourself up for another flyer, but always good continuing to build up that momentum in a track that I'm sure not a lot of drivers have too much experience at, DJ. It's of course one of the newer ones on iRacing, and also one that I don't think traditionally will see much racing, so I wonder who's been able to get up to speed the quickest.
Yeah, indeed. One of the things we heard out of a couple of the drivers last week is that need to practice and that need to get in some rhythm. And as you said, that rhythm and just kind of feel for the circuit. Wegener not looking like he's going to have that feel as he's going to stay back down in 13th. Kwok Nin, one of the other drivers here who's had a good season in the mid-pack, finds himself about a 2nd and 2 tenths off of the best time. Going to be able to improve there if that will hold true. Looks like that lap was deleted there for Nin, so that's not going to do well, but Buddy Chamberlain doing very well to improve up into 4th place.
Yeah, there are some being able to improve on the third lap heading on to the final lap, and what's important about the final lap is you'll see all the cars cutting across the track as they run out of the final corner on these runs. On that final lap, you'll have a bit of an opportunity to minimize your distance and just go straight to the line, DJ. In some cars, it's not worth that much, but I have to assume in these momentum-based cars, it'll be worth something. So something to think about as Venaro jumps his way up to 15th, only to see Greeno slide up to 12th.
And that's good to see Kelly back in the series. It's been a minute since we've seen that familiar number 12 machine out on track for Dark Horse Esports, but Kelly getting back behind the wheel. Here is Justin Atakonis, though, one of those championship hopefuls that we talked about, trying to close in the gap that currently sits at about 2.5 tenths between himself and Mariano Barrios as we ride on board, working their way through the chicane. So very difficult around there, some very high curves, and you see just how much he gets spit out on the outside.
And that's probably the end of any chance of an improvement on this lap. Just you could hear as he slid out wide, maybe off into the grass as well, just lost some momentum and speed, and not what you really want heading down that back straightaway on that run into the chicane, and well, really making use of track limits once again. He'll be one of the first to punch their lap times in and get their part of qualifying over, if the lap is even going to count.
Yeah, you saw him there coming off of that penultimate corner. It looked like the car really tracking wide as Atakonis continues to try to push the limits here, coming across the line. Even if that lap does count, it's not going to be an improvement, off by about 2 tenths. Here is Kevin Sandiego, one of those championship 3 that we've really been talking about. Sandiego has found himself a little bit off form in recent weeks. We'll see if he can recover as Barrios comes across the line. That's not going to be an improvement there for the number 17. Atakonis is down into pit lane, as is Buddy Chamberlain. Here is one of the drivers that's played spoiler, Marlon McMullen. Let's see if he's able to gain in that last 3 tenths to get a better lap time. That is barely not going to be an improvement.
San Diego was able to jump up into 4th position, so he'll work his way into the front 2 rows, but with most of the cars basically done in qualifying, I do think we've got a qualifying lineup locked and loaded, and it's going to be our championship leader on pole for only the 2nd time this season, DJ.
Yeah, his qualifying has been very good over the course of the year here for Mariano Barrios, but it just hasn't been spectacular. And it's good to see him be able to get that number 17 up on into pole position. Still waiting for maybe Alex Teeter to come across the line, but I think we should be just about ready to bring you that grid here in just a few moments' time, as it is going to be a very, very quick run down into the hotel curve here. Obviously not taking the very severe left-hander that exists sometimes on this circuit, taking a little bit more of the motorcycle approach that's a more steady left. But nevertheless, let's go ahead and bring you through that qualifying grid here today as drivers begin to sort themselves out on track. Lining up in pole position, it's going to be Mariano Barrios, followed by Justin Atakonis, then Marlon McMullen and Kevin Sandiego. Buddy Chamberlain lines up in P5, followed by Jonathan Dam, then Andrew Sharp and Gerard Farewell. Patrick Farrell will be in P9, followed by Kwok Nin in P10. Then it's going to be Richard Swindells and Matthew Wegenar. Brian Soboleski will line up in P13. Kelly Greenhoe to his outside in 14th. The row behind them, Andrew Venaro and Derek Putnam. Behind Putnam, it'll be Andrew Moran, followed by ABC himself, Austin Bartlett Chase. Then it's Kevin Berquist, Ian Cabana, and Alex Teeter, who round out your grid here for today. And there you can see drivers starting to get themselves onto the grid. We will have a full pace lap, and that'll be good news. Able to get these tires, these brakes up into a good operating window. But with 83-degree track temperature right now, I don't think they're going to have too much trouble getting those tires up to speed.
No, absolutely not. I think the important thing in some regards is now just going to be getting ready to go. These are the sort of races where right at the jump you start to make an impression on how the rest of the race is going to play out. So I think for many of these drivers, they are just getting ready for what is going to be an intense next race in the season.
Yeah, it's going to be very, very interesting to see how these drivers are going to be able to fare around this circuit. And we haven't even begun to talk about the pit lane here. It's a very perilous pit lane, very narrow entrance, and then the exit spits you right back onto the track. We'll see it as they come through the final corner, or the first corner here. But there we see a couple of drivers farther back down in the field. That's one of the YS Motorsports drivers trying to get some heat into those tires as they get ready to come through turn one. Again, a very, very treacherous corner. You see those sausage curves to the inside and the outside. Hopefully drivers aren't going to have to deal with that on that first lap. At least that's what we hope. But, well, they're there for a reason, and because racing drivers will try to take every advantage that you can.
Absolutely, but this is a car that I've only really commentated on a few times, CJ, and it's a car that can put on a fantastic show. Now, we all know that the MX-5s can thrill. Everyone adores those cars, but this is a car that's entering into the real world of competition as well. I'm really excited to see how it does there. It's always a fascinating one, and it's, like I said at the very start, a track where opportunities are going to present themselves from mistakes of others, and we saw that in qualifying just how wide some of the competitors were running.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting. And remember, this is only a 2.2-mile road course, so we very well could come up against a little bit of lap traffic here for some of these leaders. That's going to be something that we have to keep an eye on as this race continues to work its way through. Drivers coming now through the long, long left-hander at the end of the first sector of the track as we work our way now through the chicane here at Oschersleben as they try to be able to get everything together. That's going to be a one-way street through that area. You cannot try to get an overtake through there, as we saw Justin Adakonis get out of sorts just a little bit as they go. But now on the back straightaway right now. This is going to be a good area, I think, to maybe get an overtake or two done. But they are bringing their way around, and all of these drivers eagerly awaiting the drop at the green flag, Arjuna.
Absolutely. A lot of these drivers, of course, know that you can't drop the final round of a PRL championship, so their opportunities to make mistakes are winding down, some sitting in a pretty good spot. Like our championship leader, you'd think with a drop round currently scored at 28, he'd be sitting very nicely. But Adakonis, 1 point back in the championship, has a drop score of 31, so can't afford too many mistakes, and it's all about momentum coming to the end of a championship.
It certainly is. The Porsche pace car pulls its way down to pit lane, giving control of the field over to Mariano Barrios, and they come through the final corner right now, waiting to get onto the loud pedal as there goes the green, and we are racing here in Oschersleben. It is a brilliant getaway from Mariano Barrios as Marlon McMullen is already looking up to the inside of Justin Adakonis. Adakonis did not have a good start there at all. That's going to be McMullen making that move down to the inside. Kevin Sandiego is going to slot his way into fourth position, side by side between Buddy Chamberlain and Andrew Sharp, as that's going to be Buddy Chamberlain going out wide and going for a ride here early on.
Victim at the start, but the rest of the field able to filter their way on through and skip towards the infield, but great jump at the very front, and now trying to extend the margin, but with draft coming into play, they're going to stack on up and they're going to throw themselves all the way almost to the grass and get onto the brakes once more with the train starting to build.
Yeah, and the question's going to be is where that draft train is going to end, as now they fly their way through the chicane. We talked about that a little bit earlier, that may look like an overtaking opportunity, but not really one too much of there. Coming down through the left-hander right now through the chicane, trying to see what they are able to get. These cars powering their way onto the back straightaway. It looks like it's starting to be a big breakaway here for these top four or so, but Kevin Sandiego in a little bit of worry here as he's got Andrew Sharp directly behind him.
Is this going to be a lunge to the inside? It's a high-speed corner, and no, he's going to back out of it. Potential move behind, though, as we see Phil Sell and Farrowell go side by side for a moment, and now an opportunity for the 86 to slide on through.
That's going to be that number 86 machine trying to see what they are able to get. Kwok Nin looking in behind. That's Farrell getting off and out into the grass. He's going to have to recover it, and that is going to be Jonathan Dam Gerard Farrell and Kwok Nin able to sneak on by as we take a look at the number 58, Marlon McMullen, starting to close in on Mariano Barrios. That gap coming down a little bit. As you said, the draft really proving powerful.
Yeah, no, these cars definitely will allow you to follow on close, and now Barrios swinging out wide, allowing McMullen to close. You said at one point maybe a 3-car breakaway. I'd put it to you, it's a 6-car train for the time being. But it's still very early in this race with, of course, 30-odd minutes still left to go. So by no means are these drivers in the expectation that it will be a top 6 breakaway that holds. And you can still see a bit of 1.2 odd seconds back in that next pack that's trying to chase them on down. Clean start, though, for the most part. Just a handful having trouble.
Yeah, just a handful having trouble, and I'm going to be interested to see over the course of this race if we see any more drivers getting into trouble as a result of this tricky circuit. They flash their way through the chicane and through the right-hander that leads on to the back straightaway here, trying to see if there's going to be any mistakes from the drivers behind. It doesn't look that way. McMullen's been able to take a couple of tenths here out of the advantage in the lead as they get on the binders now through the Shell S, trying to see if they've got anything. Looks like McMullen carrying the story that we've seen him be a couple of races previously. That 58 looks very good on the binders.
Yep, keeping it well in balance. Remember, fixed setup across these competitors, so it's about adapting to the car that you've got underneath you rather than trying to work on the car to make it just that little bit quicker. And I always find that it really does help a driver understand car dynamics just that little bit more, DJ, is having to try and then figure out how to make a setup that maybe you don't appreciate go fast.
Yeah, exactly. If you have to sort of compromise your own driving style into the racing, then that will make you a better driver for sure. But Marlon McMullen here really starting to put the screws to the back of Mariano Barrios. Gap coming down under 0.3 of a second as they get onto the binders here through this very sort of flowing section here that is the let's call it the infield of Osher Schleben, as there are a couple of little flicks that do bring you through, and then these long corners like Hasador and down into this right-hander. A little bit of a narrower line there for McMullen. He's starting to really put some pressure to the back of Barrios.
Yeah, he is really feeling it at the start of this race, and as they fly through the chicane, sort of few laps ago through the opening section of the corners that Barrios was just running a little bit wide. On board, we jump with Mullen as they power down the back straight once again. You just see in the draft trying to close as much as they can.
Yeah, and it looked like there that Barrios was able to gain a couple of tenths away from McMullen, and that is Justin Ataconis there just sort of lurking in the background. The big news for them, Kevin Sandiego finds himself about a full second behind this battle. There you can see that green and black machine kind of flick into the back of your screen. He's got to watch out. He doesn't want to lose touch with these top three, otherwise he'll find himself falling down the championship order farther than he already has. Not a lot of passing here at this point. This lead battle continues to be very electric as Barrios sets the fastest lap of the race with a 37.447.
Just shows you, though, that the strength of the draft is so significant that fuel saving will be a slight consideration as well, DJ. Just the fact that the two cars tucked up behind, as we're starting to see now San Diego fall back once again, will be able to save just that little bit of fuel, which will matter in a fuel-limited car that therefore will have to come down to pit lane at some point over the course of the race. Minimizing your time in the lane is one of the easiest things that you can do on track, much easier than making the pass happen. Much easier to be able to do, and that's really been the downfall over the course of this season for Marlon McMullen. He has not had the best pit sequences. He's either pit off cycle a little bit, or he has tried to come in on an undercut, and that just hasn't worked out for him, and he has spent more time down pit lane, and that's really been to his detriment. It's seen him not be able to challenge for a couple of these podium positions, and indeed been a little bit rough. As there in the background, that is Patrick Farrell going for a little bit of a ride off of the corner leading on to this back straightaway. He's able to gather that car back up under him, but it certainly did throw him for a little bit of a loop in that number 19. Good off-track driving. Good for him to be able to keep things pointed the right way, but certainly not how you want to be onto the power here coming down, as he's going to have another big spin, catching a little bit of grass. And that final corner, that is not the only driver that I've seen struggle through there. Kwok Ninh had a little bit of a problem not too long ago, but now it's going to be Ninh that's able to take advantage and push his way ahead, put Kwok Ninh into P8. It shows the importance of rhythm. Once you get knocked off at once, it's so easy for it to happen once again, and that's why so important the mental side of racing, both in the real and the virtual world. Back at the front of the field, just once again, Barrios a little bit wider. Mullen that little bit tighter through the opening section of the track, and as they get onto the brakes, you can see that San Diego is starting to be dropped. The gap behind now 1.1 seconds.
Yeah, it's really starting to grow there, and Kevin San Diego, it's not like he has the excuse of Andrew Sharp being up behind his rear wing like we saw earlier on in this race. He's kind of in an island unto himself. Sharp is about 1.3 seconds behind San Diego right now, so he just doesn't look like he has the pace here today. Maybe saving a little bit of tires, but that's not a strategy that we've seen play out really over the course of this season. Saving fuel, now that's a different story, and we talked about that a little bit earlier. Now as these drivers come on to the back straightaway, McMullen again within 0.3 of a second of Barrios in front of him, just continuing to try to put pressure to the back of that number 17 to see if he is able to elicit any sort of mistake. But Barrios, as he has been over the course of this entire season, looks very clean and very collected.
Yep, so far it's looking good. You can see the marks from when some of their competitors have been a little less careful so far this race. It's also so early in it that I think for these drivers at the front who have been on top of the car over the course of the season and are fighting for the championship, they're not sweating this part of the race too much. This is that breakaway that some will expect at the front. 3-car breakaway, familiar faces, and now just trying to settle into a rhythm. It was Adaconis that ran a little bit wide on the initial part of turn 1 and 2, able to bring it back into line, but so far, nice clean race at the front. It's starting to brawl a little bit more further back.
Yes, indeed it is here. As we look a little bit farther back in the field, this is Matthew Wegener leading a big train with Richard Swindells, Kelly Greenhoe, and Brian Soboleski behind him. As they come down into the corner, that is Swindells there in that white and green machine. We take a look on board. This is a big train going back, I believe, all the way back down to Kevin Bergquist in 17th position. And now it looks like here that Wegener's got a little bit of a gap, but you can see Kelly Greenhoe starting to close in as they work their way now through the right-hander that leads back on here through the chicane. We take a look a little farther up in the field. This is Kwok Nin and Patrick Farrell as they continue their battle. Now, both of these drivers have had offs over the course of this race, and we are about 9.5 minutes down at this point, but both of them holding on to a position in the top 10. Looks like as they dive down here into the Shell S that Kwok Nin going to be able to keep ahead for the moment. Not seeing any movement there from Farrell, and indeed it looked like Patrick Farrell just had a little bit of a bobble. So now they come through that treacherous penultimate corner. They're both going to be able to keep it in line. Checking back in at the front of the field here, Mariano Barrios still leads over Marlon McMullen, but look at that, Justin Adaconis putting in the fastest lap of the race. We got cars around. That is Andrew Venaro, Brian Soboleski. That is on the entrance into pit lane. I'm not entirely sure there what happened to him, but some damage being inflicted on those cars.
Yeah, plenty of chaos further back in the field, and I think about 3 or 4 are going to require trips down to pit lane to get some sort of banging and wrenching done on them to get the body parts lining back up where they're meant to be. It just shows that, though, that in close racing like this, I mentioned earlier that passes will happen when there are mistakes, but it's also very important to make sure if there are mistakes in front of you, you stay out of trouble.
Yeah, on a narrow circuit like this, you've got to be very careful because you can have a spinning car come right across the track and absolutely collect you. So you certainly need to be watchful for any of that. This is the battle, though, that we continue to follow for the lead of the race, as it has been really in the last 3 or 4 rounds. Barrios, McMullen, and Adaconis continuing to pull away here. Kevin San Diego falling off the back of them. He's now 1.8 seconds behind as they go down the back straightaway. Not seeing any closing as those cars pitch forward. One of the things I most love about these new GR86s is you can really see the pitch and the yaw in the car as they brake and accelerate it. It makes it very easy to be explaining a little bit of braking characteristics in a car when you're able to see that much movement and travel over the suspension.
Absolutely, and it's a car again that replaces a beloved car, but I think it's one that I don't want to say is an improvement, but it's definitely not worse than what we had before. It's still very interesting. We saw it, in the iRacing Roar really fit in quite nicely until, unfortunately, chaos ensued. Chaos sometimes not unexpected in any race at Daytona. Front of the field, though, look at the margin now back to 4th position here, DJ, because San Diego is starting to slip out of drafting range 2 full seconds away from the top 3.
Yeah, he is absolutely falling off the pace here, and I'm not sure if that was a little bit of an error there out of Kevin Sandiego, or if it's just the outright pace that we're seeing from these top three. Indeed, as I look at their last lap times, it's all in the mid to low 37s, and Sandiego really only able to do a 38 here at this point, so he just looks like he is losing a little bit of time hand over fist. He's got to be a little bit careful because Andrew Sharp on that last lap was about 0.3 of a second faster, so we could see a battle here for P4 starting to develop, but this battle up at the front of the field continues to be very, very tight. I'm getting the sense here that we're going to see what we've seen again really is the story over the last couple of races in this season, that I'm getting the sense McMullen and Ataconis doing a lot of fuel saving here, just holding back a little bit and waiting to be able to pounce in the pit stop cycle. We're going to go back here to take a look at a replay. This is coming down. This is that incident we saw with Venaro and Cebulski. And Arjuna, that's exactly what you were talking about. Incidents taking place in front of you, and for Andy Venaro, nowhere to go.
Yeah, and it's really the car behind that initiated the contact through no fault of his own. To be clear, it was just that the checkup time was so short that there wasn't really going to be much of a avoiding action possible in that particular case. I do apologize for the technical issues. DJ taking you through the start of the race with no graphics on screen, but we're back up and working behind the scenes now.
Yes, we are, and good to be able to see those graphics again. Arjuna pulling double duty here tonight, so massive, massive credit to him for being able to do that. We check back in on this lead, about 15 minutes down in this race, still about 20 minutes to go, and this is the point where I would say that pit stop window is going to start to open up. We may see a couple of aggressive drivers on the pit stop cycle deciding to come down into the pits here at this point, but normally we're probably going to wait to see these drivers run the tank dry, and with what we've seen here out of Barrios, I expect him to be one of the first drivers down in pit lane, as he's not able to do any saving, but that was a little bit of a mistake coming down the backstretch from Mariano Barrios. Marlon McMullen smells blood in the water. He's going to move his car to the outside of the Shell S. Going defensive is Barrios. McMullen tries to chuck the car in. That's not going to work. He's going to have to slot back into line. Ataconis has to take a little bit of avoiding action, and they come out of the corner the same way they went in.
I do wonder how long Barris is going to be able to push this pace and this tempo without starting to think about when he's going to have to dive down to the safety of pit lane. But there it goes, a mistake and an opportunity, but not at the right place, not at the right time. If you're going to get the run down the back straightaway, you need to be able to jink down to the inside or into turn one, maybe to the inside, but McMullen thinks better of it and backs out.
Yeah, he certainly did think about it there, Arjuna. You saw that number 58 just kind of fading down to the left side of the track, thinking about that move, but decided to go not with it. Now this gap, throw about 0.5 of a second over Barrios, McMullen, and Ataconis. The point that we were making a little bit earlier about Kevin Sandiego, that gap has remained at about 2.3 seconds there behind. Ataconis, though, is the one that I'm kind of keeping my eye on here, Arjuna. We haven't seen any aggression out of him. I think he's very content to stick back in line, save some fuel, and be very powerful after pit stops.
Yeah, I think so. At least for the time being, it's wise to just let this race play out. Pit lane here is not the easiest to get into. It is definitely a place that you can maximize some time and make a bit of a difference. I don't tend to advocate for drivers pushing the limits on pit entry and exit too much, because it usually ends up worse than it ends up going well. But I think this is one of those cases where I do think we'll see drivers really throw it in, especially at the very front of the field, onto pit entry, and hope that they can maybe make up half a second or so there, because in a race where the front three are separated by 0.7 of a second, half a second rather, may make the difference between third and the lead.
It very well could, and as our YouTube chat here did point out, Ataconis definitely being one of those drivers that we think is saving some fuel here at this point. And if that's the case, he may be able to not only gain some time coming into pit lane, but gain some time being stationary in the box and be able to work his way out of the pits quicker as well. Now a little bit of close action there as we take a look on board the number 318, just a little bit farther back of the right front of Justin Ataconis' machine. You can hear those engine noises. I do love the sound this GR86 makes as they get down onto the braking and then get onto the loud pedal here, coming out of this long, long section of 180-degree corners that make up the first sector.
already have a car onto pit lane as Kelly Greenhoe slides their way down onto the safety of the box. Wonder if this is that start of the window, and then maybe some of the drivers will start thinking about it. McMullen looking the most feisty. The question will be, where does he slot in relative to the rest? Pit lane delta here, probably around 30-35 seconds, depending on how well you execute on your pit entry. Which does mean that I think Barrios is, McMullen's in a position where he might be able to cycle into some relatively clean air, but I think it's probably a lap or two too early to think about it.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. Kelly Greenhoe really got to be known in the previous MX-5 series by opting for those very early pit stops and coming down in. So not entirely surprising to see Kelly coming in here on lap 10. The good news for that driver of the number 12 is that he's going to find himself in some clean air with about 13 seconds up the road to Ian Cabana. None of your leaders, though, deciding to come down into pit lane here at this point. They're all going to stay out on track. A little bit of good side-by-side here that we keep your eye on. That is going to be Kwok Nin and Patrick Farrell. Remember that battle we've been really keeping our eye on. They have been absolutely tooth and nail after the two of them went off track earlier. Nin has the advantage now going down the main straightaway. Farrell trying to see if he's going to be able to make the move into turn one. He's going to poke his nose out to the inside. Dab on the brakes. He'll wait another day.
Yeah, this one has really gone back and forth, and even after some of the mistakes we've seen from others, they found themselves locked together and can't get away from each other. After this, of course, it's an interesting run on the schedule. We head to Alton Park, which is not too dissimilar to this track, DJ, but then, of course, penultimate round of the championship at Road America, one of the best tracks in the world. That is going to be crazy. That is going to be wild. And then a finale at Rudskogen. Similar to this track in that it was introduced quite recently, and so maybe some of these drivers don't have that much experience. Also similar to this in that it's going to be hard to pass, and that's a round of the championship that you cannot drop.
Yeah, you have got to be there for that final round, and so we're going to see if drivers are able to really compete around what I believe is iRacing's northernmost circuit on the service, as it's going to be a real challenge. But to your point, Road America is going to be a round that, for all you viewers, circle that one on your charts. These GR86s, there are going to be an absolute blast around that circuit. And as you said, one of the greatest racetracks in the world, and always produces some of the most fantastic racing ever seen. So that is one that I certainly have had circled for a very long time.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Maybe I'll be watching on rather than in the commentary booth, which I won't complain about. I'll be completely honest, because I get the sense you'll be voiceless after that, and then you'll still have to go and commentate on the GT4 cars.
I will indeed. You know me too well. Although, weirdly, I don't know how, I have yet to lose my voice from commentating, knock on woods. All of the wood there. I've got a busy year this year. I can't afford to lose my voice. So we've got another driver down into pit lane. That's going to be Richard Swindells for Dark Horse Esports. Clearly, that Dark Horse Esports team opting for a short fill, a short first cycle. That is their option here with just under 15 minutes to go.
Yep, one by one. They'll start trickling on in as well. Once again, about an 8-second pit stop from number 16 machine. We're getting to that point now where it's an interesting proposition for McMullen if he does want to try and make some sort of undercut work. Again, remember, he will have a shorter fill than Barrios. I think maybe McMullen now more concerned about how much fuel saving Adakonis has been able to pull off, because he's definitely been the one of the three that's been most focused on the fuel saving and working to the very end of this race. Remember, of course, McMullen started third, Adakonis in second, so 318 hasn't really looked to try and regain that spot, but everyone content to stay out once again as we wrap up to the end of lap number 13.
Yeah, drivers just seemingly content to ride around in their own way here at this point. No real inclination for anybody else to come down pit lane. And through the rest of the field, we're seeing a big spread out of these drivers. There's not a whole lot of battles that we're really able to clock in on. This is indeed our closest battle that we have really all the way down through the field. So that's why we've got our eyes here as they work their way around. By the way, to the YouTube chat, we are racing at Oschersleben. happen in Germany right now. So that is the circuit. Obviously a little bit of a lesser known one, but it's got a fun rhythm to it, I have to say, and some good history behind it as the first facility in East Germany to be opened. So some interesting history there as well.
Still, the best bit of history about this track is the legend John Cleland. The guy who designed this first corner should be taken into a dark room and beat about the head. To be fair, I think drivers had to take most of the responsibility for what went on that day, but he's not too wrong. Barrios with a small mistake, and McMullen once again fades to the outside.
He's going to have that look going into Shell S, and he's not going to get it done. He is closer than he's been in a long time. The gap under 0.2 of a second, almost giving a little bit of a push there to the number 77 as he immediately gets back to the left-hand side of the track to be able to take the penultimate corner. Do any of our leaders decide to come down into pit lane? Surprisingly, Justin Atakonis decides he has had enough. He is going to go for the undercut.
And now I'm very curious where he's going to emerge relative to the rest of the field, because of course, about 30, 35 seconds, depending on how you execute this pit entry, he has the potential to potentially get stuck behind a handful of cars. And so, important now to make sure that no major drama getting into the box, no major drama leaving pit lane, and really starting to push it once he rolls back out onto track.
Yeah, exactly. If he's able to come out in clean air, he may be able to try to jump these cars. We have had a couple of other drivers opt to come down into pit lane. Andrew Sharp, Patrick Farrell also coming in there. You can see on that split screen as it looks like a pretty easy stop there for Justin Atakonis, although a little bit long compared to that of Richard Swindells and Kelly Greenhill, which has sort of been our benchmark. Atakonis putting in, a time, and that's going to be around.
That was Bartlett Chase that spun just as Atakonis was coming out of pit lane. Scary moment. Atakonis, though, now does have a bit of clean air to play with, about 4 seconds of it. Longer stop, like you mentioned, but not that much longer. 8.7 seconds in the box itself, at least indicated on our timing. One of the shorter lane times that we've seen so far from cone to cone. So I think that's something that Atakonis will be hoping works in his favor. Now, the question is, to Barrios, to McMullen, do they come in this time by? I'd want to try and split it. If I'm McMullen, I do the opposite of what your race leader does, and that's indeed what he does do.
Arjuna, when you're right, you're right. McMullen coming down into pit lane, and you saw that little bit of a hesitation there from him. I think he was exactly thinking what you were, of just doing the opposite of what Mariano Barrios decided to do. Kevin Sandiego looks like he is going to stay out, although Jonathan Dam is going to come down into pit lane. We watch McMullen right now coming to rest in his pit box momentarily. The big question is going to be where is he going to come out in relation to Justin Atakonis?
Yeah, and Atakonis winding out of the penultimate corner will get onto the brakes and really maximizes the usage of the track. No fuel saving now. He is really pushing it and wheeling it as much as he can. It's a good stop time for McMullen, 7.8 seconds, but in terms of cone-to-cone time, basically identical to the 318. It's a long, winding pit exit. Atakonis still yet to come onto the run into turn number 1. McMullen's going to have it, but not that much clear of Atakonis.
No, he's not. The gap looks like it's going to stabilize itself at about a second, so Atakonis does look like he lost a little bit of time there, but it's certainly enough that he can be able to gain it back in if he's able to keep on a good run here at this point. By the way, that's Buddy Chamberlain right up the road from them. We also take a look at Mariano Barrios here on your screen. Still your leader, 5 seconds clear right now of Kevin Sandiego as he brings his way through the Shell S. This is going to be the moment. We are going to wait to see if this number 17 is going to come down into pit lane here on lap 16. Does it look like it? Yes, he does. Here it is, all of the pit stop cycle coming to play.
And this is now crucial for McMullen to make sure that he is the one that maximizes this, because he's got a bit of a buffer behind. Atakonis not really a worry in the rear view mirrors. And so now as your race leader and the championship leader hits pit lane, the opportunity for a potential leapfrog with an undercut.
All right, Sandiego also coming down into pit lane, as is Kwok Nin here at this point, so I think this could be the absolute end of the pit stop cycle. Barrios comes to rest in his stall, no problems there, as we watch Marlon McMullen working his way out of the final corner right now. That's going to be a quick stop there for Barrios with about 7.9 seconds on my screen, cone to cone. He was very, very quick, though, at about 33 seconds. So he He's now going to come out of pit lane right now. Barrios bringing the car through this tricky pit exit. There is McMullen. It's going to be Barrios ahead. The question's going to be by how much. It looks like it's going to be by about a second and a half.
Oh, what a brilliant job during the pit cycle, despite leading the field and punching the hole in the air with about 8 minutes still left to run. Mariano Barrios has been able to strategize his way to a 1.8 second margin just on the threshold of the drafting range, and now finds himself in the spot where it's those behind that have to push to close back on up.
Yeah, 1.9 seconds the gap now between McMullen and Barrios here at this point. Ataconis still sits about 1.1 seconds behind Marlon McMullen, really separating out that battle that we've been keeping our eye on for the majority of the race. This is one of the other battles that we've been watching. Patrick Farrell and Kwok Nin right now, they're separated by about 9/10 of a second. This is the battle now for 8th place.
Still finding themselves linked with one another as we jump on board with the number 86 machine, fittingly named 86 machine as well. It's into one of those fast chicanes where you can really see that body language of the car that DJ was talking about so well. And when we talk about body language, DJ, it's something that when I get friends over to try my rig and I'm trying to explain to them how to think about how to make the car go fast, I always try and say, when you accelerate, you put the weight of the car going back. When you brake, you put the weight of the car going forward, and that's where you start the baseline of knowledge, right? These cars emphasize that so much, and you can just see that roll, that body attitude as they dip down, as they squat on back, and it's just really great to be able to visualize that and see it.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. They're a great car that iRacing has been able to put together, obviously modeled on the GR86, which is coming to a racetrack near you this year.
And near you.
And yes, it is. And you will recognize a very familiar voice doing the coverage of that. So keep your eyes peeled for that. But we've got a battle here right now. Andrew Moran and Kelly Greenhoe. That's Greenhoe to the outside in the number 72, the red, yellow, and white machine. Little bit of almost argy-bargy coming down into the first corner, as now the track is going to favor back to Kelly Greenhoe, and Greenhoe able to get that position and move his way up into 11th.
Behind them as well, Putnam able to work up into 15th spot, but as the time ticks away, plenty of drivers still trying to just push and gain whatever they can, and now Moran trying to sweep back underneath Greenhoe. Remember, Greenhoe was one of the very first cars to dive down onto the pit lane, so has been out there the longest since cycling back out, and works out all right, up 3 positions from where they started in a race that's really only seen one other driver in the form of Andrew Moran being able to gain more positions. Being a race where it's been difficult to work your way forward, attrition's played a small part.
Yeah, it certainly has, and that's a little bit of what we expected here. That is Kevin Sandiego, speaking of which, having a little bit of mini attrition, getting it wrong coming through that final corner and finding himself out into the kitty litter. That is not going to help him improve any time whatsoever. Let's watch the replay. Just looked like the fickle brakes on this GR86 coming back to bite.
I think he may have been off in the grass as he got on. Yep, you can see.
Yep.
Left side's off in the grass. And the way you can tell is just how quickly it snapped on him as well. It wasn't one of those ones deep into the braking zone where the car unloads and then something goes wrong. It was literally just as you stomp on the brakes. Nope, I don't want to be pointed in that direction anymore. Fortunately for Sandiego, doesn't lose a position, finds himself still in 4th and clear of Andrew Sharp. 3 and a bit odd seconds to get behind, but we've seen drivers try to maximize the track. There's an indication why sometimes it's not the wisest idea.
Exactly. As we check back in on the battle for P11 right now, Kelly Greenhoe continuing to lead Andrew Moran right now, and Richard Swindell's behind him. Looks like that was Moran having a little bit of a wider run there coming through the right-hander. Now gets it together through the left, and he's going to be right on the back here of Kelly Greenhoe as they bring their way across the line here and down into this sweeping left-hander that's going to lead its way into this long left-hander. I wish this track had more corner names because they are pretty great when they've got them. But Moran here starting to take a little bit of a peek to the inside of Greenhoe. I think just trying to unsettle that number 12 as much as possible.
Yeah, I think this has been an interesting race, and it kind of sets us up quite nicely to head back over to Scuba where these drivers were a week ago with the GT4 machines, because I think what we've seen today in race 1 is what we're going to see in race number 2. Drivers having to be patient, thinking about how they can get moves done potentially in the pit lane, trying to stay out of trouble, and ultimately trying to survive and not run themselves off the track as well.
Yeah, exactly. As you said, Scoob is going to be the exact same way, I think, for a lot of the drivers in the GT4 series that we will head over to in just about 3 minutes' time. That's right, folks. You not only have one great race tonight, you've got 2 great races. We're not done after the conclusion here of the GR86 Cup. But we check on board the hood here of Marlon McMullen as he continues to try to close down on Mariano Barrios. He has been quicker over the last couple of laps to the tune of about a 10th and a half. The question's going to be is if the draft is going to start to help him here at this point, and if he's going to be able to close down it all in this final about 2.5 minutes in this race.
Now remember where the opportunities have come for McMullen so far this race. Sometimes through turn 1, Barrios a little bit wide, opportunity for McMullen to maybe slip on through. Opportunity down this back straightaway into the chicane, but it's always been with the 58 ending up on the outside, which is never really going to be an option to get the move done in these particular cars. So, if you're going to get the move done, you're going to have to get it done in an aggressive and unexpected way. You'll have 2 laps with which to play, though, as they wrap themselves out of the final corner. 1:50 still left to go. Enough time to cycle around Oschersleben 2 more times.
Exactly. 2 laps to go here for Barrios to be able to hold on. 2 laps to attack for Marlon McMullen. They take similar lines down through Hotel right now, as now it starts to spread itself out a little bit more there. McMullen taking a narrower line there through the long right-hander. That's going to gain him a couple of tenths. Let's call it about a half a tenth as they come out of the corner. Looks like he's hustling there. You saw that car pitch a little bit. I think he is being very, very aggressive, throwing everything he can at the wall to try to see if he can get something to stick. But right now the gap looked like it expanded a little bit. It held at 0.9 of a second as they come through Hastor right now.
Smooth is fast in most race cars, including this one. Yes, you want to try and hustle it around. It's not always the quickest thing to do, but gap has been shrunk momentarily as they work midway through the corner. It's on the exits that Barrios just seems to be able to pick up that ground once again. He just seems so composed, so calm under this unrelenting pressure that has been there since the very start of this race. And once again, down the back straightaway, Ataconis nowhere to be seen. Give credit to McMullen for being able to shrink that gap down in the closing stages, but running out of time with 1 lap left to go after this.
Yeah, I think what he needs here is a mistake out of Barrios, and unfortunately, being about 0.8 of a second back, I don't think he's quite close enough to really be able to put the pressure onto the back of Mariano to be able to get any of that and to be able to elicit that kind of mistake here at this point. As now they come out of the corner right now, coming across the start-finish line. White flag in the air from Barney the Flagman. The gap's only about 8.5 of a second. 1 more rotation of this track to go for Mariano Barrios, and he could be looking at a podium yet again.
Well, look from up above through turns 1, 2, and 3, and the different lines that they take as well. So much tighter for McMullen, gains him those tenths on entry. It's on exit that the wider line and the arc for Barrios lets him ramp up his momentum just that little bit earlier. Through the next part, again, very similar story. It's McMullen trying to be a bit more aggressive on entry and trying to pinch on down and minimize the distance. But at least for now, Barrios still able to maintain the momentum in the gap. McMullen, I don't think he's going to have enough. He's knocked at the wall as much as he could, but Barrios is going to take a pole position and convert it to a potential victory.
Yes, he more than likely will as they bring their way out of the right-hander now coming through chicane. The gap holding at about 0.7 of a second. We ride on board the hood here of Marlon McMullen as they work their way onto the back straightaway. That gap will come down a little bit, I'd imagine, by about a tenth or so with the benefit of the draft as they bring their way now down into the Shell S. Onto the binders, seeing that car pitch forward is Marlon McMullen. Barrios holding on to about a 6, now call it 6.5 of a second advantage. Only 2 more corners to go here for the number 17. He brings the car out of the penultimate corner that's caught out so many drivers here today. The number 17 now brings it out of the final corner. No real issues. 5 seconds to play, 0.5 of a second to play with, and Barrios takes another victory, this time at Oschersleben.
Nerves of steel to hang on there, flashes the lights in recognition of what a tough hard-fought victory that was. 4th win of the season as well now, DJ. I think it's been a remarkable run to have won more than half of the races, but still to have only been 1 point clear of Adakonis coming into this round. He won't have extended the margin that far to Adakonis when we tot up the championship points in a couple of moments' time, but ultimately momentum on his side as we wind to the end of the season.
Momentum on his side indeed as drivers continue to filter their way across the line right now, waiting for a few of them to come over. As we said, not really any battles here up through the field as everyone was pretty much spaced out over the course of the running here today. And I believe we just wait now for Kevin Bergquist, Andrew Venaro, Austin Bartlett Chase, a few more to come across the line before we can officially call this one done and dusted. But it was Mariano Barrios able to take victory up at the front of the field. McMullen and Adakonis rounding out your podium, really keeping them all together as they ran around here. Then it was Kevin Sandiego and Andrew Sharp who round out your top 5 as we wait here for the final driver. That's Alex Teeter, and we wait also for Ian Cabana to come across the line. The rest of your top 10, Gerard Farewell, Jonathan Dam, Patrick Farrell, Kwoknin, and Matthew Wegenar. Then it was Kelly Greenhoe, Andrew Moran, Richard Swindells, Buddy Chamberlain. There, as we have it on your screen, Wegenar rounding out your top 10. Fastest lap of the race set by Marlon McMullen, doing a very, very good job. Then we get down here. Derek Putnam was 15th. Kevin Bergquist, Andrew Venaro, Austin Bartlett Chase, Alex Teeter, and Ian Cabana rounding out your top 20. Brian Soboleski, 7 laps down in P21. But that means that it is time here for us to jump on over and talk to a few of our podium finishers, including our victor, Mariano Barrios. Mariano, another great race for you, another ability to be able to keep everything together and withstand the pressure.
Yeah, it was a tough one. I'm sweating after that one. I was really worried that they were saving more fuel behind, so I was trying to take it a little easy. Just I knew that it'd be all about avoiding mistakes, and there were a few moments, but for the most part I managed to keep it clean and come out with the win.
Well, I mean, was that really the goal here today, is just focusing on a clean drive? This is such a tricky track to overtake. When you got that pole position, did you kind of think, okay, part of this job is now done? Yeah,
that's 100%. I knew when I was practicing that it was going to be similar to Tsukuba, maybe not that severe, but overtaking was going to be pretty difficult here. So I knew I had to get a good quality lap in, and if I could be on pole, then it'd be a lot easier to defend the lead than try to take it.
Well, we head to some similar circumstances next time out when we make the trek over to Alton Park. Arjuna and I were both talking about how those tracks are kind of similar. Do you think it's going to be a similar strategy for that one?
I think so. I'm not 100% what layout we're running if we're doing the chicane. If we're not doing the chicane, it might be a little bit easier to draft there, but if not, it's going to be similar, a similar deal. Just try to get a good qualifying and hold out the lead.
Well, we wish you all the luck in the world when we get there, Mariano. And as for today, who makes this possible?
Well, I do need to thank the folks at the Precision Racing League for putting on such a great event every week. It's a great time, good clean racing everywhere, and as always, my wife who watches the races every night.
Always love to hear that spousal support. Mariano, congratulations again. We'll see you next week.
See ya.
All right, that was your victor, Mariano Barrios, and now we've been able to catch up with the man who was chasing him for the entire race, Marlon McMullen. Marlon, so close there. It looks like it was just out of reach.
Oh, I tell you what, Mariano is, I don't know what he does at his pit stops, man. I did all this fuel saving behind him. I did everything right, sticking with him. So did he. He did an awesome job, I'm not saying, didn't he? But, yeah, he was pushing me to the limit. I was just so happy to hang on with him. And, I had Justin behind me too, keeping me really honest. And it's like, I'm in the sandwich of the P1, P2 championship battle. This is not where I want to be, but hopefully if I fuel save, I can get ahead of them all. So, that was the plan. And then, yeah, I did all that in the pit stop, and then Mariano came out. I'm like, you're kidding me? He's insane. And then, yeah, we had a really good battle towards the end. I gave it, like, everything, and I threw the kitchen sink at him. And he's just, yeah, he's got something on me in the pit stops, and I have no idea what it is now.
Well, with that in mind, if that's the pit stop strategy, as we head to Oulton Park next time out, does qualifying become all the more important to be able to get up ahead of it?
Well, that's the other thing. I'm like, I started, what was it, P1 at Fuji, and that was great because everyone's drafting you, you're using up your tyres more, you're not fuel saving, so they're fuel saving behind you. And I mean, it's what do you do? 1, 2, or 3. There's nowhere good to start. All you got to do is go as fast as you can. So I think before the pit stops now, I'm just going to start sending it, because there was a few moments I had on Mariano, I was considering it, but I'm like, nah, the fuel saving should help me out here, and then yeah, amazing.
Well, we look forward to seeing this battle continue on in next week's time when we head to Oulton Park. Marlon, as for today, who makes this possible for you?
Yeah, as always, you guys, thanks for putting on the awesome battling, in the series. And Advanced Sim Racing, RaceSpot Sim Racing, the Butt Kicker, Mecha Sim Hardware, Race Lab, Ninja Trader, and of course my team, Precision Racing League.
Well, thank you so much, Marlon. Congratulations. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
All right, that was P2 Marlon McMullen, and that's going to wrap up our coverage here tonight for the GR86 series. There you can see the final run to the line. Oulton Park, Road America, and Rudskogen. Going to be a great way to round out the season. I'm very much looking forward to it, and it's going to be pretty fantastic to see how these cars are going to be able to slice and dice on some of the greatest circuits in the entire world. But fear not, everyone. As we said, racing is not yet done for today, as there you see it on your screen. The GT4 series is geared up and ready to go, and we have had a last-minute change. It appears like that, unfortunately, it is we are not going to be at Tsukuba. We're at Road Atlanta this time out. So things changing up a little bit there. Arjuna certainly going to be probably a little bit better racing. I think that may have been a little bit of a poll that was changed around on us. But there you can see the schedule here. Headed to Sebring, Nürburgring, and ending the season at Road America. Pretty much counter to what we saw in the GR86 series. We've got 3 of the world's greatest and best tracks for overtaking coming up in these last couple of rounds.
I'm just saying I'm a bit disappointed that if you're going to go to the Nürburgring, you just don't go to the Nordschleife itself. You might as well, you're there. And I'm also going to say #blame Hugo, because he asked me today, can you fill in? Yep, sure, would love to. Look at the schedule, Scuba, great, ready to go. Road Atlanta, oh, I love it. But #blame Hugo, DJ.
Blame Hugo, indeed. We'll have to get on that. But we also want to run you through the championship here in the GT4 series, because it has been a pretty dominant force up at the front of the field for our drivers in the geodesic team. John Badefer leading the way with 165 points over Justin Ream. Michael Diaz starting to put a little bit of a challenge, though, to the back of Ream. He's one to keep an eye out for. Miguel Vigo going to be in P4, the third of that geodesic team. Then it's Adam Brockway and Vincent Trepanier, followed by Nicholas Rice-Saputo and Abner Acosta, Alec Bergstrom and Keith Bonilla. But the big story that doesn't show up on these standings has been the winner from the last 2 rounds, Manuel Troncoso, who has been absolutely electric in his Mercedes-Benz. We'll have to see if he's able to repeat those speeds here today at Road Atlanta. We also do have a teams championship to run you through. Alpine Stars Geodesic McLaren dominating up at the front of the field over Precision Racing Esports number 111. Then it's YS Motorsports Gold in a little bit of a battle with Unit Sim Sports Alpha. Alpine Stars Geodesic Mercedes finds themselves in 5th place, followed by Race Factory, who's in a battle with Delta Sport and Precision Racing Esports 112, not too far back from them. But they've got to watch out for Can-Am Racing, who sits only 2 points back of the 8th place team. And then rounding out your top 10, it is the PCF Racing team with 79 points. And that is going to go ahead and bring us into our qualifying action here today from Road Atlanta. This is going to be a little bit different than Tsukuba. I think qualifying not going to be nearly as important as the draft down the big back straightaway. Going to be absolutely mega.
Yes and no, because I still think that this is a track where, even though draft is so important out of that very tight turn 7, you can get breakaways, DJ. It is a track where bravery is rewarded, and understanding how and when to use what are some quite raised curbs around the circuit. We're looking at turn 3 as an example here. That's definitely one that you got to know how to cut consistently and cut in an effective manner. Then of course over at turn 5, when you really run yourself out wide and take all 4 wheels off of the racing surface as we run ourselves down and out of the S's. Turn 6 is a cambered in corner. Really have to trust that the car is going to squat down and roll yourself on through. Turn 7, tighter than 90 degrees, so a lot of people think, oh, it's a normal 90-degree corner. No, it definitely is not. Then somehow you go down a straight, and from turn 7 you're on the brakes at turn number 10. Doesn't make sense, but go with it. Turn 10 is a chicane where it's all about the exit, because you rise up the hill, descend down, plunge down through the final corner, which is a fast, flat-out right, and then across the line. It's a technical track where, again, in a GT4 car with not much downforce, the best will get rewarded.
Yeah, indeed they will. This is a track that really and truly demands a lot of commitment, a lot of push from these cars and these drivers. You have got to absolutely give everything you can do. As we take a look on board here, one of the Mercedes drivers, this is Miguel Vigo for the Geodesic Alpine Stars team, the Hydro Race Geodesic team, excuse me, as they bring their way up through that first corner. So much commitment that is required there to be able to get that corner right. And then again, over the blind crest here of 2 and 3, you have just got to know this track backwards and forwards to be able to get those 2 areas right.
Yeah, and look here, for example, down through the S's, how much of the curbs you're using as well. And so understanding how to make that work, especially with the setups of these cars being fixed as well, understanding how much you can get away with what the setup builder has used for those damper and suspension settings can be important. This is that turn 7, of course, where you clip a little bit of the inside, but really just roll onto the power and cut a little bit of that outside curbing. And DJ, somehow, like I said, you exit from turn 7 and you go down what is a straight. Let's be clear, this is a rolling straight, and you get onto the brakes at turn number 10. Logic.
Exactly. It's a little bit of Road America logic, I think, is the way to look at it, as they come down here into that braking zone for turn 10. Miguel Vigo trying to be able to put his way on as the first driver's have been able to put a time down on the board. Looks like it's going to be Nicholas Rice-Saputo up at the top of the charts with a 124.624. Yaquez closely behind him, Keith Bonilla, Adam Brockway, as Michael Diaz jumps his way up into P2. And to the surprise of no one, Manuel Trincoso and now Miguel Vigo up into P1, separated only by 8 thousandths of a second.
Yeah, we'll have to wait a bit for the McLaren of John Baderfer to work across the line, because he's just exited out of turn number 5. Margins at the top. Look at that, DJ. 4 cars split by 0.06 of a second around a track that I just described as rewarding bravery but still being technical. We're in for a fun little dogfight at the front of the field if we're going to see 4, maybe 5, 6 cars unable to break away from each other and just locked in combat throughout the course of the rest of the evening.
Well, and let's keep in mind here, that's without seeing John Baderfer or Justin Ream, who have been up at the top of the charts here. We haven't seen them come into the equation yet, so where are they going to find themselves in the order? As we ride on board with Baderfer right now, coming through out of turn 11, down through turn 12, the weightlessness as you come up and over the hill. Baderfer coming to the line here at this point. How is that time going to stack up for McLaren driver? Ooh,
didn't
that
count.
Looked like it would count. A little bit of an off track here.
And that may have been up here at what is a very important turn 3, knowing how much you're able to cut. Other thing that, just noting the time, he was anyway half a second down, so I think he was just trying to wrap himself back around to try and get another lap started without losing too much time. But another thing that I did notice even through turn 5 for him is, well, there goes Justin Ream up to the top of the board, as Miguel Vigo seems to have found even more time to extend the margins at the top, with now just 8 cars split by about 0.4 of a second. But Baderfer's car just did not look that comfortable, and of course across the suite of the Hydro Race Geodesic Racing team, that is going to take some getting used to here in 2023. They've got different manufacturer choices here, which always makes things a little bit interesting, and how you can share and compare data.
Yeah, exactly. And we've seen here earlier on Reem and Beta for really in sort of lockstep together. But we've also seen them be a little bit of counter teammates, as it were, as the two of them have been willing to absolutely go hammer and tongs and fight with each other. Yes, they're teammates. They're competing for that top prize as a team. But they want to fight and they want to race, rest assured. Here comes Beta for coming across the line. Is this one going to count?
There we
yes,
go.
It is. And it's up to the top of the charts, a 124.220.
To nobody's surprise, John Beta makes his way around Road Atlanta and is somehow fast, even in a GT4 machine. I think we may still get some improvements, though. Here comes Troncoso to the line as Trepigny jumps up to third. Does the 462 improve? No, he's in fact just starting a lap now, but always great to see an Arnage competition machine, and he'll run himself up through the hill and see what is now a Hydro Race Geodesic Racing team. 1, 2, and 3 with Reem back up to second.
And this reminds me a little bit of what we saw at Fuji earlier this year, where those where the Geodesic team was able to beat 1, 2, 3, and then they were broken up by the surprise of this man, Manuel Troncoso. So we'll have to see if he's able to get some good times down on the board here at this point. I am seeing some green sector times for Manuel, so maybe some good ones. Abner Acosta, another driver that's had a very good season in his sort of return to road racing, as we like to say. The number 5 machine finding himself in 5th place and currently carrying the standard for Aston Martin.
Yeah, good to see a nice little mix across of the manufacturers as well. I know a lot of people will talk about BOP across all sorts of classes, but it's nice that with these fixed setups, drivers are still able to find different cars that they're comfortable with. We're going to get what will be the final times across the board for a handful of drivers, including Brockway, who does not see an improvement. Can anyone behind find some time?
Well, let's see. Vincent Trepigny is one that is going to be ahead of Brockway. He's going to come out of the final corner. Looks like that is going to be a slight improvement to a 124.436, but not good enough. Michael Diaz able to put in a time that's going to bump Trepigny down into 5th place as Miguel Vigo crosses over the line, and Justin Ream crosses over the line to go fastest with a 124.117. Only 0.2 of a second separating our top 4.
Yeah, but it's nice and close at the front of the field, but now we're really just waiting for this man, John Bedifer, who has really set up a blockbuster end to this qualifying session, has only got to find 400ths, and is going to let us see him run his way through turn 6, out of turn 7, and then through the final couple of corners, searching for pole position in that 67 machine. Already has 2 pole positions this season, as does Justin Rem, with 17 points separating them in the championship. Still both have plenty to play for, with some interesting racing to come after this one. But for Bedifer, momentum, surely the main focus. He's down the hill for the final time in qualifying.
All right, he's got one more break zone here, gets on the binders of that McLaren, flicks its way through 10A and now through 10B. Now it's going to be a flat-out run where you've just got to hold on and pray down through 11 and 12. He's going to call it off.
Well, no improvement then.
All right, John Bedifer coming down into pit lane. Clearly doesn't think he's going to be able to improve, and he will do no better than 3rd place. Troncoso also coming down into pit lane. I think here the majority of the field looking like they're pretty much going to be done here with about a minute left to go in qualifying.
Yep, no, we are done and dusted, even with 60 seconds still left on the clock. And for Bedifer, it was really just one good lap out of the 4 attempts that he was allowed. We saw lap 1 was invalidated as he came across the line. Lap 2 was the lap that we tracked most of, and then trying to set up for a blockbuster lap 4 was not to be. Still, an Alpine Stars Geodesic. See, DJ, we are, what, 44 days into the year, and I've made that mistake probably more than 44 times. The Hydro Racing, Geodesic Racing cars still run themselves 1, 2, and 3. This is a track where we've talked about the draft out of turn 7. It's going to be very difficult for them to maintain that sort of an advantage, especially with just half a second separating the first odd 10-11 cars.
Well, and we haven't talked about fuel saving, which is going to come into play here down that long back straightaway. Rest assured, the drivers will be doing some clutching and coasting, and that could be a big play here over the course of this 40-minute race. But the checkered flag is in the air for qualifying, and that means it is time to run you through our starting grid for the GT4 Fixed Sprint Series. It is going to be Justin Ream in pole position, followed by Miguel Vigo, then John Bedifer, and Michael Diaz. Vincent Trepanier will be in P5 for the ASR Able team, and then Manuel Troncoso lines up in P6. P7 is Alessandro Torchio, followed by Abner Acosta, with Simon Thurier and Nicholas Riceputo in P10. P11 is Adam Brockway, and flanking him is his YS Simsport Gold teammate of Alec Bergstrom. 13th will be Carlos Villa, and Alex May in the Mercedes will start to his outside. Then it's Fernando Yaquez and Keith Bonilla, followed by Francis Castillo Romero and Aiden Young in 18th. 19th is going to be David Van Roy, followed by Frankie Arvello, Drew Lidke 21st, and Kevin Ayers in 22nd. Row behind them is Joe Pagurio, and then Bradley Beeman in 24th. 25th is Philippe Mignon, and Arnaud Genet 25th. Philippe Mignon is going to be in 26th. The 26-car grid here today. Plenty of different makes and models out on track. The least chosen one is going to be that Porsche Cayman, as it has been really over the course of this whole season. We haven't seen that be favored as much. Mercedes does appear to be the favorited car once again, and there you can see the whole grid lining up as we get ready for a full pace lap behind the Porsche pace car.
Now remember, you can change your car in PRL championships, however it comes at a point penalty, so it's not something that those fighting for a championship tend to do. Once you get to this late stage of the season, you know the car underneath you, and you very much will make it work no matter what you may think about it, because you've got no other option. You've got to find some speed out of it. The gold and black Hydra Race Racing Geodesic cars roll us away as we work our way around a full pace lap. Plenty of opportunity for drivers to build up some temperature in their tires, but like you mentioned with fuel saving, DJ, this is also an important lap to make sure you're not burning too much fuel as you run around the 2.5 odd miles in Brazelton, Georgia.
Yeah, you want to keep yourself off that loud pedal as much as possible, do a little bit of fuel saving, and I think crucially here, you're going to want to be focusing on heating up those tires a little bit. It's only 65 degrees ambient temperature right now, 71 degrees Fahrenheit on track, and so that means conditions are a little bit chilly here, and so you're going to have to watch out for that and be a little bit careful. 4 miles an hour worth of wind, so that's pretty much nothing to be talking about. It means it's going to be fantastic conditions for racing, I think probably after about the first lap when these tires are fully up to temperature.
Yeah, I think we're in for a real barn burner here. I'm glad that we made the change from Scuba. I'm not going to lie, late minute change for us here in the broadcast booth, but we head to a track that everyone knows and loves, and very different, right, from Scuba to the point on Oschersleben, right? We said that maybe not a track that many had practiced too much at, and you'd even said, talking to some of the drivers, they had said something similar before as well. This is a track that everybody knows. Everybody has done plenty of laps here building up to the iRacing Petit Le Mans, and so therefore it's a track that they understand where you can make moves, and maybe it will mean that we're in for a bit of a fun fight as drivers strategize their way on track to be able to place themselves in the right spots.
Yeah, and I think that strategy is certainly going to come into the fore here as we continue to go along. Plenty of drivers going to be thinking about that strategy, going to be thinking about fuel saving, maybe opting not to make a move early on in this race to just try to sip that fuel a little bit longer and try to extend the fuel cycle as much as possible. But now the field comes down into turns 10A and 10B, being led by Justin Ream and the 912 McLaren Geodesic machine as they bring their way up the hill and under the Fox Bridge. Turn up the noise because it is almost time to go racing. Porsche pace car is down into pit lane as Ream has control of the field. He gets on the loud pedal and there goes the green. We are racing from Georgia. It's a little bit of movement there farther back in the pack, but a good getaway from Justin Ream as they dive down into the first corner. John Bedifer and Miguel Vigo going to be fighting it out a little bit. It looks like Abner Acosta tries to get interested in that battle as well. It's going to be Vigo that's able to hold on to P2 here for now, but Acosta looking very, very threatening. A little bit of off-track running, and Bedifer going to be able to hold on P3 over that Precision Racing Esports driver.
And Michael Diaz trying to join the front as well in his Aston Martin, but teammates able to coordinate on the starts efficiently to run 1, 2, and 3 with no changes amongst them. But into turn number 5 behind, you can see just how chaotic it gets as you run yourself out wide and all the way over the curbing, then into 6 onto the brakes of 7, and the crucial run down the back straightaway.
Yeah, and here they come through turn 7 for the first time. You saw a couple of 2-wide action a little bit farther back down in the field. I think that's around Lidke, Ayers, Van Roy. That all coming together, but it looks like they're able to sort themselves out, and I haven't seen any official DNFs here on the day. It does look like, though, that Vincent Trepanier is under a little bit of pressure here from Alessandro Torchio as the Mercedes driver puts pressure on the back of the Porsche.
Yeah, coming to the end of the first lap. Don't really want to try and break out of line just yet because it's all about staying in the train and thinking about fuel. It's all the way back in 13th and 14th positions where it's Bergstrom who looked for a move down the hill as they rolled onto the brakes, but under the bridge and back over the line to finish lap number 1. No real movement in the top 10.
No real movement in the top 10, but Alec Bergstrom, who you mentioned before, having a lot of movement out to the outside as he dirt tracked his way coming across the start-finish line in his BMW. He's going to find himself coming back into line behind Francis Castillo-Romero here up into turn 1, able to get that YS Motorsports machine covered and back into condition, but that is a very scary ride, Arjuna. And I've got to say, some good car control to be able to keep that thing pointed the right way.
Yeah, these cars don't really appreciate being run off the track, as Vincent Trepanier, I think, may have lost a couple of positions down through the S's, and going around is Torchio off of turn number 5. So easy for the car to get unsettled, and it takes out a victim.
And here comes Rai Saputo sending a move down up to the inside of that ASR by Abel Porsche. It looks like the Porsche is just getting swallowed up here through turn 6. That is going to be Adam Brockway trying to put pressure onto the back of Trepanier. And now it's going to be Carlos Vila trying to be able to move his geodesic Mercedes as well. This is a 3-car fight. Trepanier trying to figure out where he wants to go. Almost contact there between the Mercedes and the BMW as they fly their way down into turn 10A. Getting onto the binders here. This is going to be a little bit close. Very late on the binders goes the Mercedes of Vila. Is he going to be able to get a 2-for-1? No, as it looks like Trepanier is able to hold the line, and Vila's just going to have to settle for 1 position gain.
I get the sense that it was likely a slowdown for Trepanier, probably over at turn 3, cresting over the hill and using as much of that curb as possible. Because if you're going to slow down in the S's, it's usually only for one reason. Brockway, by the way, got involved in some of the rallycross shenanigans at the very start. You can see him following, in fact, being the first of the 2 bright yellow machines to have taken the off-trip excursions. He fortunately gets away without too much damage as a result of that, though, and went on to have a fun fight just a lap later.
Yeah, he certainly did, as now Trepanier tries to be able to hold off any attack from Vila behind. Right now, you can hear them rumble their way over the curbs as this is turning into a little bit of a 3-car fight. There, we're going to take a look at that run from Alessandro Torchio. You talked about the difficulty there of turn 5, Arjuna, and it came back to bite our first competitor.
Alex May had a moment of his own as well. Was this with contact or was this rather similar? Well, it unloads in a slightly different way. He is much wider, but just as loose and just as squirrely and just as off the track.
Just as off the track, and crucially there, as opposed to Torchio, it looks like he sustained some pretty hefty damage, and he has indeed taken a tow and is back down into pit lane. We take a look back at the front of the field right now. Ream leads Vigo, Betafort, Diaz, and Trancoso. This little bit of a breakaway up here for the for the top 5. They've got about 2.5 seconds over Abner Acosta, so, well, playing out like we've seen it a couple of times. They're running their own race.
Yeah, so far, so clean. Goes back to the point on fuel saving. Still a long way to go. And Road Atlanta is one of those tracks where you can actually basically save into every single corner. Up the hill into turn 3, lift off the throttle just a little bit. Down the hill through the S's into turn 5, lift off the throttle just a little bit. Into turn 6, lift off the throttle a bit, and don't brake. Just let the car roll through the corner and use the cambered in nature of that turn to carry you to turn 7, where you guessed it, can save some fuel once again. Just delay how long then you have to, or how quickly you have to get onto the brakes. It's one of those tracks where in iRacing Petit Le Mans, DJ, I've gone from fuel stints of 44 laps to fuel stints of 48 laps because of how aggressively you can cut your fuel usage.
Yeah, you really, really can. And now my question here is going to be for Justin Ream is if he is going to be backing off a little bit at some point and maybe allowing for Vigo or Betafer to lead this race and to be able to do a little bit of fuel saving down the long straightaway. That's a strategy that we've seen this geodesic team do many, many a time, and we'll have to see if that plays itself out. Trincoso, another one to watch out for on the back of this pack right now. He is going to be very, very fearsome. We've seen him be able to save fuel. We've also seen him be aggressive. As we take a look on board here with Michael Diaz, the Precision Racing Esports driver, currently your reigning champion and holding on to 4th place.
I'm just saying, if anyone from our large competition is watching, I haven't got my brand new shirt. I only have the old shirt from you, so my bias level is only turned up to 70% here today. But I must say, like I said earlier, good to see our large competition across of the world. We see them in some of the VCO competitions as well, including the Esports Racing League, and always a feisty team in top split iRacing special events. Seen them more in the GT3s than in the GT4s, but there's a lot of GT3 drivers, DJ, who enjoy these GT4s because as GT3 cars have evolved over the years, they've become very aerodynamic dependent, as RaceSpotTV is going to lose out here and lose out his 7th position. But GT4 is more stripped back, no downforce, more raw, more natural, and a lot of drivers do enjoy it.
Yeah, a lot of drivers do enjoy it, and I've got to tell you, one of my favorite series to cover over the course of the year is the GT4 Sprint Series that I get to cover live, and it really does produce some absolutely fantastic action. And the reducing of that downforce, it doesn't negate anything when it comes to the run. As we take a look here, looks like RaceSpotTV just found himself going a little bit wide. I don't think that was a slowdown necessarily, and I think Derrier was just able to find the advantage and press the advantage in, frankly, in an area you normally don't see too many overtakes.
Yeah, full press there, and I think that was just the pressure eventually building. We've already seen one race where our leader didn't crumble under that pressure, and you get the sense that it might be a somewhat similar situation at the front where it is now truly a 5-car breakaway. 2.5 seconds the margin back to Abner Acosta, which is not insignificant in these GT4 cars, and to your point about is Justin Ream going to be willing to run at the front. Remember what we saw from Barrios earlier on, DJ. He ran at the front, still had the shortest pit stop time of them all, and still led coming out of that pit stop cycle.
Yeah, I still can, so we're going to have to see here if Ream's going to be able to do just that. Starting to see a little bit of a breakaway here between Vigo and Betafer. Not sure if that's going to continue on or if that may just be a little bit of a bad corner there for Betafer, as it does look like he was under a little bit of an attack from Diaz from behind him. We're going to focus a little bit farther back down in the field right now. This is Francis Castillo-Romero, Aiden Young behind him. Directly up in front of him, that's Alec Bergstrom in the BMW. A battle of the BMWs here at this point, and looks like Francis Castillo-Romero is not going to be close enough to be able to put any pressure to the back of that YS Motorsports machine, but Aiden Young certainly starting to maybe think a little bit about trying to move down here into turn 10. Let's see if he decides to poke his nose out. He's going to take a little bit of a fade on the run. In fact, all 3 drivers there taking a little bit of a fade. Big late move, though, for Young as he goes deep into the corner. I think that's going to be able to be defended there by Bergstrom, but I'll tell you what, that's Frankie Arvello there getting his elbows out, and he's going to try to make the pass in the final corner.
Yeah, they were almost too wide, a couple of rows deep as they battled, and now the yellow and black Mercedes going to try and cut back underneath, but Bonilla's going to be unable to squeeze his way on through as Aiden Young gives him a bit of a fade, but they all managed to figure it out in time. Don't forget, DJ, that these BMW M4 GT4s, now the old, retired BMW M4 GT4s in the real world. We have a brand new generation of car release in 2023, and so it's going to be interesting to see if and when, hopefully more when, we get that here on iRacing.
I was going to say, I've got to imagine it's going to be a little bit of more of when, as, ooh, that got a little bit scrappy coming down into the corner. The Mercedes there of Young trying to be able to get that move on Arvello. They're going to be side by side coming through turn 7. Somehow they're going to keep out from dooring each other. Maybe a little bit of contact there on the exit of the corner, and that's going to be a position gain for Aiden Young. This battle coming at you fierce and spectacular, as now here comes Keith Bonilla. You mentioned his name not too long ago. He's the one trying to make the move.
And now the BMW sort of blocked off in terms of options. Mercedes feeds Mercedes some draft, but all of the shenanigans have kind of checked them all up. Dive down the inside from Arvello. He's going to be able to slow it down and roll through the corner, but an opportunity for the fight back from Young as the Rear end of the BMW tries to step itself around. Down the hill they'll go, and across the line once more.
This is why I love this Road America circuit, as now here comes the Mercedes, the 427 of Aiden Young, looking down to the inside there on Arvello. He's going to muscle his way on by, and that's the only way to get a move done here down into turn 1. 10 minutes down in this race. The battle's coming at you very, very fearsome here, as now it looks like Aiden Young's going to start to get a little bit of a pull away here over Frankie Arvello, but Keith Bonilla certainly looking like he wants a piece of that number 28 behind. We take a look back up the front of the field as it continues to be Ream, Vigo, and Betafer leading this geodesic 1-2-3.
Yeah, and the gap back to Acosta is held relatively constant. They aren't pulling away anymore, and so now they'll all be aware that they're not totally separated from the rest of the top 10 who find themselves still in contention for some important championship points after this. Ream's still the one leading, as Betafer now fades a little bit over to the inside. Not sure if that's just trying to cover off any moves from Diaz or Troncoso as they work themselves under that Fox Factory bridge once more, but you're definitely right. The two Mercedes of the, or rather the two McLarens of the Hydro Race geodesic racing team looking a little bit different in body language. Betafer looking a little bit more tentative at times, but Ream calm, composed, and running at the point.
Yeah, and I wonder if that's just maybe a little bit to deal with the fact that he is going to be in communication with Miguel Vigo to make sure he knows what he's doing. And there, a little bit of that twitchiness, a little bit of that nervousness again coming out of John Betafer. Ooh, speaking of nervousness, that was the number 1 of Michael Diaz, taking a big heaping of curb coming down through the S's, but it doesn't look like it's going to hurt him all that much. Here we ride on board with Manuel Troncoso, trying to see if there's going to be a little bit of a run here for the 462 driver into turn 6. Looks like they're all going to fan themselves out, taking a similar line now down into turn 7. This is going to be the blasting off point. Is anybody going to get a good enough run to be able to get a race?
Still Betafer struggling to hold lockstep with his teammates running 1 and 2, but should still be able to comfortably hold on to his position as they run right now. Bonilla's been able to get in front of Arvello as they exit off of turn number 7, and they've got their own little drag race boiling down as they work on the back straightaway.
Yes, they do, and that's going to be David Van Roy poking his way this way and that, trying to see if there's going to be any room to be had. Van Roy just trying to find a little bit of a move here as Bonilla's going to go around what will be the outside of turn 10A. He's going to have to make this stick, but if he's able to make it go, it's going to favor back in his favor. Give it a little bit of room there by Frankie Arvello. They're going to be side by side coming up into the Fox Factory Bridge as here they come. Arvello taking a very, very wide line to try to carry momentum. There's inches between the two. It looks like Bonilla's going to be able to hold it and slide in front as now here comes Van Roy trying to make that same move up into turn 1.
Arvello, I think, just trying to leave enough space for the Mercedes on the inside, and that's what ultimately compromised him the most. All the fighting's allowed the 121 to close as well. They're not brawling at the front. You better believe they're doing so up and down through the field. This is one of those tracks which just seems to invite some crazy racing, especially in cars like this, a little bit slower powered than their bigger GT3 brothers, and with that little bit less downforce, you see a few more mistakes out of the drivers.
Yeah, you certainly do, relying solely on mechanical grip in these GT4 machines. We're going to jump you around in the field here a little bit. This is Nicholas Rice-Saputo closing in behind Simon Terrier and Abner Acosta in front. This is that second lead battle that really runs from about 6th on back to 10th place here. Little bit of movement there from that ASR by Able Esports Mercedes in front from Terrier. That just looked a little bit apprehensive in the braking zone, a little bit wiggly, I think is the right word.
We are seeing a few teams that have picked different cars, Teroulier and Trepanier being the example, one in the Merc, one in the Porsche. I think it's something that you don't really see in too many series, just because when setup is so important, it requires team drivers to be in the same car so they can share the knowledge. But in a situation like this, it's a lot of fun when you're able to pick something that maybe you want to drive that your teammate doesn't, because I can tell you there are a lot of discussions within certain teams come at iRacing Special Event saying, I would really like to drive this car, until someone chimes in to say, well, sorry, it's not going to be fast enough, because that's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes here on iRacing.
Yeah, it certainly is. It's a little bit of wiggleness there from Abner Acosta, really chucking that car down into turn 6. We take a look on board here with Trepanier as he brings that Porsche out of turn 7 right now. Going to tuck him behind in the draft. Looks like he's lost a little bit of time to those up in front of him. Call it about 0.4 of a second compared to 0.2 that Thierry and RaceSpotTV are running up in front right now as they work their way down the back straightaway, coming down into turn 10. Doubt we're going to see a move here from Thierry. Indeed, it's just going to concertina it down a little bit as they come in. Still the gap right now between Acosta and Troncoso holding at about 2.5 seconds as we close in under 25 minutes left to go in this race.
Yeah, I think the important thing, like you said, is the gap's still holding relatively constant between the leaders and the peloton behind, which is always going to give a little bit of a reminder to those top 5 cars that there are drivers behind ready to pick up the pieces if we start stumbling over one another. But it also reminds those behind that we can't afford to fight too much, because if we're in a position to be able to close and latch back onto your race leaders, we don't want to be giving that one up. We're also getting closer and closer to that point, almost now, 20 minutes in, where pit window starts to come into play, DJ, and this is a track where the pit lane itself is, want to talk about tricky pit entries. This is a full commitment pit entry that you very much will have to work your way through. And as we take a look at the track map as well, you can see that your leaders will basically be guaranteed to filter off into some traffic. So I don't think they're going to be so committed to an early pit stop, at least just yet.
No, I don't think they will be either, as certainly here at this point, we're not seeing any indication from these drivers that they are going to be wanting to back off at any point here at this point and dive down into pit lane. And again, we tend to see, that was a big bobble there from Michael Diaz coming down into the corner, almost made contact with Vigo up in front of him. And I've got to say, that is very, very lucky that that was not bigger. Look at this. Reams starting to stretch his legs up the front of the field.
Well, what happened there was Betafer actually got past Vigo, maybe some coordination between the two of them into 10A, and then Diaz just taking his normal momentum through A, almost ran into the back of Vigo through the second part of that turn 10 complex, and now will get into the back of Miguel Vigo, who is turned on the exit of turn number 3, hard into the wall, body parts go flying, and the Hydra Race Geodesic Racing 1, 2, and 3 becomes just a 1 and 2.
Oh, and heartbreak there for Vigo as that car is unfortunately, I think, going to be out of this race. Indeed, he's taken a tow back down in the field. Arjuna, let's watch this. Just gets onto the binders, a little bit of a check up there in front. And that was just enough that I don't think Diaz really had anywhere to go. He tried to waylay his momentum as much as possible coming through the corner, but it was just close enough that that car started to snap, and Diaz just gave him a little bit of a helping push.
It's why you do have to be careful with how closely you follow cars in front of you around a circuit like this, because small mistakes from that car in front can be so perilous to the rest of the chasing pack. And, well, unfortunately, it is Miguel Vigo that gets hit the hardest of them all. He was not the only one to have some strife and to require a trip back to the pit lane. We're going to get a look here at a big slide for the 13 of Joel Pagoro. And, well, you bash the right front in like that, I can guarantee you'll need some help to return to pit lane.
Yeah, and as you see that car kind of working its way back across the track like that, that is definitely some suspension damage. But now, as you said, it is now a geodesic 1-2 up at the front of the field. The question here is going to be, at least it was, if Troncoso was going to be able to close that gap in. It was at about 0.7 of a second, but Troncoso doing Troncoso things, and he's got it down to 0.3. I think this is going to be a race on. We've seen this story play out the last couple of weeks where Troncoso has just followed behind these geodesic drivers and put the pedal down when he needs to.
It's now McLaren, Mercedes, Aston Martin at the very front of the field. It's going to shape up interestingly for them as they all figure out exactly where their car has got a bit more speed than the others, getting closer and closer to that halfway mark in the race. And once again, field is starting to get splintered up just that little bit more now. And so again, as we enter that pit stop cycle, driver's going to be in a position where they're unsure as to whether they are going to be able to emerge in some clean air, as those behind them also try to make those same judgment calls. Down the hill, will hit the halfway marker, this time across the line.
Yes, we will. As they cross over, you can see there that track map on your screen. Doesn't look like we're going to have too many problems here with lap traffic over the course of today, which is going to be good news for these leaders here at this point. By the way, Trincoso just set the fastest lap of the race, so he is certainly starting to close in here. And I think now that we cross over the halfway point, maybe a little bit of fuel saving done here for Trincoso, and he is just ready to push and try to gain his way back in as Ream, little bit squirrely there coming down through the S's, looked a little bit out of control, but able to gather everything back up under him. And now I would say the battle is on here for P2.
Remember, Trincoso was also at the very tail of this train. He's only leapfrogged Diaz courtesy of that little mishap and miscommunication that we had over the crest at turn number 3. And look how close he is to the back of Betafer as they get off the corner. Who's got the better exit? It's Trincoso that's got the double toe from both of the geodesic cars in front, but I don't think he's going to be able to convert that to a pass down the hill into turn 10.
No, I don't think he is. Indeed, I was riding on board with him there, and it looked like he was lifting and coasting a little bit. Betafer trying to break the draft, going defensive down into 10A, almost to the point that it looks like he's having a look at his teammate there, Justin Ream, but that's not going to be it. They've got to watch out a little bit here because Diaz in the back of this battle has certainly been able to do his fair share of fuel saving as well. That Aston Martin certainly looking threatening in the rear view mirror in this top 4 breakaway. There we ride on board with the Aston Martin racing driver as he comes down into the corner. You can see here, frankly, just how much lifting and coasting he was doing.
We do have cars taking over on and off to the pit lane now, so we are entering that window. A sea of cars coming on in fact, most of them BMWs. Brockway, Bergstrom, Yaquez, Romero, and a handful of others cycle their way on in. So we're into that point now where questions will be asked. How long do we want to try and risk? How much fuel can we get away with taking? How little fuel can we get away with taking? And then you've got to actually do the hard task, DJ, of bringing it down to pit lane in a safe manner. Betafer compromised through turn 6 though, tight on the entry to 7. Is this the opportunity for Trincoso to get that little bit closer?
Well, it may be a good idea here for Trincoso to maybe think about trying to make this pass and then diving down into pit lane. It wouldn't be the craziest idea in the world. He's certainly got the pole, but again, he's going to lift and coast here. He's still thinking about that fuel-saving game. He is clearly running to numbers here, although it does look like Betafer still worried about the attack from that white and pink Mercedes. That was close, and that compromises Betafer. Here comes Trincoso down to the inside. That's going to be Diaz peeling off, going down into pit lane. Justin Ream into the pits as well, but Trincoso up into the lead of the race.
Heads up driving there from Diaz to recognize that Trincoso and Betafer seem willing to battle as well. That was RaceSpotTV off in the very back of your shot through the final corner and getting the rear end all sorts of stepped out through the grass. But Diaz recognizing that if he stayed out, followed Trincoso and Betafer, he was guaranteed to lose some time. Trincoso with the late fade to the inside of 10B, able to squeeze his way on through. Betafer trying to fight his way on back into turn number 1. And now Ream and Diaz will hope for some clean air and hope to try and get their foot down to the floor.
Oh, that was a bad run there for Betafer coming off at turn 5. He let the car drift out just a little bit too wide onto that rumble strip, and he caught a little bit of the grass. The car was all kinds of slideways coming out of the corner. As there we take a look, that is going to be your former leader, Justin Ream, out to a pretty big advantage there, it looks like, over Michael Diaz to the tune of about a full second.
Crucially, clean air. That's the most important thing. If you want to box and you are offset from your competitors, you want to make sure you do so in a situation where you can now just push and get your foot down. Rides over the curb at turn 5, as does Diaz trying to push. Meanwhile, Trincoso and Betafer through the chicane. Will we see them in with 16 minutes still left on the clock?
I've got to think they're going to be coming down here sooner rather than later, and we were going to see Betafer come on in, but Trincoso, the fuel whisperer, is going to stay out at this point. And now the question is going to be where does Betafer come in as a result of this? Is he going to be close to his teammate in the form of Justin Ream, or did that little bobble coming up through turn 5 cost him too much time?
Did the move, the attempted move as well, on the lap before, which saw Trincoso slide his way past the 67, cost him as well. Pitbox is in a good spot. He'll roll and immediately get himself off the limiter and release himself back up to racing speed, but Ream, with the temperatures and pressures in his tires back where he will want them to be, is up to speed and already flying past as Betafer with a slightly longer pit stop.
Yeah, that's not going to be good there for John Beta for 18 seconds. It looks like it's actually right about in line with what Ryu and Diaz did. And indeed, I think he was in line as well with the cone-to-cone time, both clocking in at about 45 or so seconds, maybe a couple of tenths here and there. But for Beta, I think the biggest problem was that little bobble that he had that he now finds himself behind Michael Diaz.
So now we just wait for Troncoso to come on down and see where he factors into this equation. The margin between Ream and Diaz 1.1, so not totally filling the rearview mirrors, at least just yet, is the Aston Martin, but trying to close, especially as we work onto the back straightaway once again. Troncoso is in this time by, so we don't have to wait long to find out as the 462 rolls down at pit speed.
Yes, he does, and this is going to be the big question. Where does Justin Ream come in relation to them? Remember, 18 seconds. That's about the mark that we're going to be looking for here for Manuel Troncoso. Is he going to be able to hit that mark, or did he do some fuel saving and be able to make this a little bit of a shorter stop for that 462 Mercedes? Ream comes down now out of the final two corners as Troncoso still waits. 15.2 seconds for Troncoso. He is out and on his way. He's going to be out in front of Ream.
And that is what sitting back and waiting to see how the race unfolds can be. Such a powerful move. 1.5 odd seconds the margin as they work over the crest at turn number 3. It's not totally done. Troncoso's going to have to do it on the track, and the question will be, does he have enough fuel to get himself to the end? We'll find out with plenty left to play for.
13.5 minutes left for this Battle of the Titans up at the front of the field. Manuel Troncoso trying to make this 3 in a row to be able to see if he is able to do it. They are trying to be able to get their way around. Now as we take a look at Troncoso, he comes down through turn 7. The gap looks like it's stabilized at about 1.9 seconds. It's crucially going to be out of draft range here for Troncoso.
Just on the very edges of it. If Ream has a couple of good corners, he's right back into it and then starts to feel the effects until he bubbles under about a 1 second bracket, and then you'll feel the full effect of that draft. It's going to be so important for Troncoso to be pixel perfect right now. Hit the marks, make sure you're not racking up the off tracks, making sure you're using the track as much as you possibly can. Again, I'll go back to the question though, almost 3 seconds shorter in pit lane for Troncoso compared to Ream, Diaz, and Betafer. He's really cutting it close in terms of fuel, but surely he's got enough.
He surely has, and I'll tell you something, Arjuna. I doubted Manuel Troncoso the last 2 rounds of this GT4 Sprint Series. I'm not doubting him again. I think he's going to be able to pull this out potentially as we ride on board right now with Diaz. Going to check a little farther back in the field as we've got a real gaggle of cars. This is Trepanier, Acosta, and RaceSpotTV absolutely going at it, hammer and tongs.
Yeah, and the battle for 5th has really hurt themselves with no chance now of closing up. 7 seconds the margin between 4th and 5th positions, and while they continue to fight, Betafer is getting a great run through turn 6 onto the back straightaway with Diaz maybe feeling some pressure, but Betafer got some wheels off into the gravel and kicked up some dirt. Has he slowed his momentum too much?
It cost him a couple of tenths of a second. The gap is now coming down from about 2 tenths right now, call it about 1.5 tenths. He's going to have the overspeed if he wants to look for the move. That's going to be Diaz covering off to the inside as they come down the hill right now. It's going to be a battle of the late breakers going down into turn 10A. It looks like they're a little bit of side checking, a little bit of a hip check, but I think that's going to be Betafer able to get the move done. He's going to cut that corner on through turn 11 as narrow as possible, and he's going to be able to have it done. On the split screen, you saw there Trepanier able to hold off the buffs from Acosta and RaceSpotTV, but here comes the cutback from Michael Diaz. He's going to chuck it down into turn 1, and Betafer's got to give way.
Oh, and almost a shove as they started that climb up in towards 2 and 3. But Diaz able to slide his way on through and then park the car exactly where it needed to be. A fantastic job there. Still fighting further back as we wind towards the final 10 minutes. It's now Carlos Vila that does make it 3 geodesic racing cars in the top 5. It's just gotten past one of the ASR able cars as they work their way down into turn 5 as well. Diaz and Betafer, though, have taken themselves out of the equation when it comes to the race lead. Troncoso has been started to be caught. The gap has come down to about 1.5 seconds as they build onto that back straight.
Oh, let the battles, let the excitement start to increase here. Ream getting that gap to about 1.6 seconds. I think he's going to be starting to feel a little bit of the draft here at this point. This is certainly not over, and if you are Justin Ream, you are going to be pushing as hard as you can going down into these final 10 minutes of the race. And we take a look farther back down in the field. Carlos Vila holding off Derier, holding off Trepigny, moves from behind as Acosta tries to throw a defensive move on RaceSpotTV. That's going to come to no avail, but Acosta gets into the side there of Trepigny. Contact, and that's Acosta around.
The defense turned into offense that turned into a spill, unfortunately, and Abner Acosta clumsily through that turn 10 chicane is going to drop himself out of the top 15. I think fortunately the damage maybe to the other cars not as bad as it could have been. Front of the field, we have seen Justin Ream put a foot off the track, and that's cost him a little bit of ground to your race leader that he's trying to make up once again. These two at the front, you can really tell, are pushing as hard as they physically can.
Well, and just look at their last lap time there, Arjuna, about 0.2 of a second faster than anybody else on track. Indeed, they are tickling down into the 124.6s here at this point. There was that little off track for Justin Ream. I think that's going to hurt him a little bit more on this next lap than it's going to hurt him on the previous lap. As we take a look at this incident down between RaceSpotTV and Acosta, I've got to say, Abner, I think, just got a little bit too late onto the brakes coming down into the corner and made contact there with Trepigny.
Absolutely. I don't think you could really see it too many other ways. Unfortunate, but sometimes it happens in racing, and you learn more from your bad days than you do from your best days, DJ, at the very end of the day, and I'm sure that we'll see Abner Acosta pick himself up and deliver out what will hopefully be a much more consistent performance at Sebring next time. A very frustrating track in its own regard.
Yeah, it certainly is. For drivers, obviously the bumps all the way around, and thankfully you're not going to have to be dealing with any of the setup changes that you've got to deal with to combat those bumps. As Francis Castillo-Romero and Alec Bergstrom going side by side down through turn 10A and 10B. It looks like there the Romero is going to be able to hold it out for now. Bergstrom, though, still looking at an attack. We ride on board here with Keith Bonilla in 14th place. The number 8 machine certainly starting to get a little bit hungry, but that's not what you want to see. Alec Bergstrom with a big internet blink there.
No, you just got to now ride, and he's going to run himself wide through turn 1, and Bonilla's going to say thank you very much, snatch himself up a bit of that 13th position, and now work on the back of Romero. Plenty still left to fight for plenty of drivers up and down through the field.
Yeah, plenty to go, including this battle here between Carlos Vila and Simon Thierry as they come down into turn 7. That was a very aggressive turn in from both drivers, and look how close here Simon is to the back. He is going to be getting a big helping of the draft with a gap under 0.2 of a second. Call it under 1.5 tenths here at this point. I don't see any sign of lifting for the ASR by Abel Mercedes driver. Is he going to have a little bit of a look? No, there was the lift coming down into the braking zone. He decided to coast a little bit early. Now, Arjuna, I don't know if that's fuel saving or if that's maybe just waiting for a different lap here to try to make the move, but he's running out of time if it's the latter.
I think it's more just the expectation that if you fight Trepigny, RaceSpotTV, they may be brought back into the mix, and so he wants to do it. If he's going to get the move done, he's going to do it in a way that he can execute cleanly and with confidence and assertiveness. Sometimes there is something to be said about being assertive on a racetrack, DJ. If you do something with aggressiveness and intent, you're more likely to see the other driver let you squeak their way on through. It's always something you'd like to see, although I don't think Keith Bonilla or Francis Romero are willing to be as courteous at this point in time.
No, I don't think they are. As it comes down closer and closer, it's going to be more and more difficult to try to get those moves done. Bergstrom continuing to have a few internet problems there as he closes in behind the number 96. Right now, they work their way through the S's as he tries to be able to get anything he can. We just saw a switch around in position here as Thierry almost had a move done on Carlos Vila, but Vila able to hold that at bay. And all of this battling has allowed for this man, Vincent Trepigny, to be able to catch back up into this battle.
Yeah, an opportunity for the Porsche to latch itself onto the back of this queue for 5th position. Is he going to see his teammate jink to the inside? Don't think it's really the opportunity just yet, but look how much Trepigny physically closes as they work down through the braking zone, kicking up a bit of that dust as they shortcut a little bit of the curbing through turn 10A over the crest of the hill before descending down with that Michelin building off on your left-hand side. Must say that Carlos Vila's not looking the most comfortable. The pressure is truly building.
Yeah, I've got to agree with you there. That geodesic Mercedes starting to look a little bit twitchy here, getting under the increased pressure from Simon Thierry behind him. Now they clobber their way through turn 1 and 2. I love the sounds that you can hear as these cars make their way over the curbs. Now down through the S's, trying to see if there's going to be anything here for these drivers. It looks like it's all just set up here from Thierry. Good line through turn 5, able to gain a couple of tenths of a second here as they make their way into 6.
I really love that look from up above through turn 5. You can just see how much they are really running to the edge of the track and sometimes even cutting a bit of the grass as they blend back onto the racing surface. Great run out of 7 though for Thierry. Vila's going to be able to park it and maybe compromise the ASR able Mercedes just that tad bit more, but the draft, the momentum's still on the side of the 89. 4 minutes left to go.
4 minutes left to go. Thierry certainly feeling the pressure here, feeling the want to attack as they're going to come down the hill. Here comes the move. No, he's going to stick back in line again. I think he's waiting for the final lap here to send that maneuver. He wants to wait until the absolute last moment to send that. Either that, or he's waiting for his teammate, Vincent Trepanier, to try to steal 2 positions away from geodesic.
Fighting a bit more into the chicane as well. Still the 96 involved in a broil with Bergstrom. They've seen Keith Bonilla skip up the road, but almost 3 wide as they plunge down the hill. Through turn 12 they'll go. Plenty of fighting. Is this what all Mondays are like, DJ? Because this is great.
It depends on the track, I'll tell you. We've seen some that are a little bit processional, but when you bring these GT4s to a fantastic track like this is exactly the kind of thing that you can come to expect here from this series. As right now we take a look back at the front of the field, Manuel Troncoso, that gap has come down a little bit here between himself and Justin Ream, but not nearly enough to Ream's liking, I have to think, as he needs to try to close that down a little bit more to be able to have any chance to be able to make this move. The gap holding at about 1.5 seconds, and I believe here they're going to cross over the stripe with 2 laps to go.
Agreed. That's how my math checks out as well. So 2 to go this time at the line. Justin Ream, I don't think really has an opportunity now. It's going to be too little, too late. The question will still remain, does Troncoso have enough fuel? But surely at this juncture with just 2 to go, should hopefully be no concerns behind the wheel of the 462 as they stride their way towards the line. Checking back in that battle for 5th. Thierry still all over the back of Villa. Trepanier lurking and ready to make a move as well as they cross the line with 2 to go as well.
And here is going to be the question, does Thierry decide to wait until the absolute last minute to make this move, or does he decide to send a big one now on this penultimate lap? It's going to be up to him. He is in the proverbial driver's seat when you talk about this. It's going to be a very, very close run for him, and I've got to be thinking here, if I'm Vincent Trepanier, that I may be able to steal a position as well, and maybe be able to get myself up into P6 if things work well, but we will have to see. Right now, the Hydro Race geodesic machine holding off well off into the grass, though, makes a big mistake. That's going to let one on through, and now here comes Trepanier thinking about it as well.
That is the dangers of pushing that wide on the exit of turn 5. It shows just how on the limit these drivers are lap after lap after lap after lap. Unfortunately for Villa, the pressure built, and unfortunately the mistake came. He's got 1.5 laps left to hold on to 6th position.
Yes, he does. And one driver that only has 1 lap to go, as it looks like Justin Reams made a little bit of a mistake behind him, dropping back to 2 seconds between himself and Troncoso. As Troncoso comes across the line here to take the white flag, we flash back to the battle here for P6. Trepanier trying to be able to get the move on Villa. Let's take another look here at that mistake. It looks like he just missed the apex coming through turn 5, and that was enough to send him off into the grass.
He hooked a little bit of the gravel with the right side as well, which shot him off to the right rather than to the left where he was turning, and that's what really compromised him and has now set this final battle up on the last lap of the race. Not the only fight to watch, of course, though, DJ, because Michael Diaz still feels the pressure in the fight for the final step of the podium. Can Bader slide his way back forward to 3rd?
Well, we know the straight line speed of that McLaren. We know what it is able to do. Are they going to be able to use it here to their advantage for the Geodesic team as they come down into turn 6 right now? Now bringing their way into turn 7. Absolutely crucial here for John Betafer to be able to get the best run off the corner that he can. He was a little bit off the apex, but that may work out to his advantage. Although 4.5 tenths of a second, that's going to be a mighty gap to try to make up.
Yep, don't think he's going to get the opportunity to make a impact on that fight. And as they work down the back straightaway for the final time, think it's going to be a similar case in that fight further back. But at the front of the field, a worthy winner with a strategy masterclass.
An absolute strategy masterclass. I'm very much looking forward to talking to this man once again as Manuel Troncoso comes down out of turn 11, now down through 12, a flash of the headlights, and crosses over the start-finish line to take his 3rd victory on the trot, able to steal it away from Justin Ream. Behind them, Michael Diaz holds on for P3 as here comes that battle we've been following. It looks like the final attack here from Trepanier. He's going to dirt track it. It's not going to be enough, and he is going to lose out to Carlos Velo by 73 thousandths of a second.
Hey, he gave it a try. You can't deny that. At the end of the day, Trepanier was willing to send it as far as he could. Unfortunately not to be. Front of the field though, I mean, what a drive from a man that really kept quiet for the vast majority of the race, and it wasn't until he was ready to go that, well, he really did go. 3 wins on the bounce for the 462, and the question really now must be, DJ, what would have happened if he was around for the first 4 races of the season?
Exactly. That's going to be our big question for the course of this entire final part of the championship, and I think it's going to give us something to look forward to next year if we see Troncoso decide to come back in and fight for a full season's worth of races. We follow here as David Van Roy, your last categorized driver, works his way down through turns 10A and 10B, now through 11 and 12, as he will cross over the line to come home in P22. And that's going to finish out our order here today, everyone having crossed over the line. So let's go ahead and bring you to our final finishing order. It was Manuel Troncoso able to take victory over Justin Ream and Michael Diaz. John Betafer only good enough for 4th place, as Simon Cyrier was in P5. Then it was Carlos Vela, Vincent Trepanier, Nicholas Riceputo, Adam Brockway, and Aiden Young rounding out your top 10. In P11, it was Keith Bonilla with Abner Acosta having to do a little bit of a recovery drive here today to come home in P12. Then 13th was Fernando Yaquez, followed by Francis Castillo-Romero. Alec Bergstrom came home in P15. 16th was Frankie Arvelo, followed by Drew Lidke, Kevin Ayers, Alessandro Torchio, and Bradley Beeman. 21st was Philippe Magnan, followed by David Van Roy, the last driver to complete the running here today, as Vigo, Pegroyo, May, and Genet were all categorized as DNFs here on the season. Well, Arjuna, your first taste here of Monday night. I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are.
Well, I think Road Atlanta definitely had a helping hand, but that was a delightful way to spend a Monday evening. Of course, I think with the GR86s, it was a tight but tense fight at the very front, whereas here in the GT4, it very much exploded at times. And once again, strategy, always so important. Even in races that are not the longest, you still have to be on the very top of the strategy masterclass.
Yeah, you certainly do, as it does look like we have been able to catch up now with our 2nd placed driver, Justin Ream. And Justin, a great run there out for you today. It looked like it was just a little bit out of touch, unfortunately, and you just couldn't claim down to Manuel after that pit stop.
Yeah, Manuel seems like he's the fuel-saving king lately. I was trying to get just close enough to get on the draft. I was matching his lap times, but near the end I ended up having to save a little bit extra fuel so I could make it to the line. So I couldn't quite close the gap as much as I wanted to. I was kind of hoping for a little bit more draft, but it is what it is, I guess.
Well, not to give away too many secrets here from your team, but is that going to be the strategy to try to beat him? I mean, are we going to be looking here at fuel saving as the way to go, or are you guys going to be focused on absolute pace in the races coming forward?
I think fuel saving is the way to go. I don't think we can. I think it'd be pretty hard to outpace Manuel. He's pretty quick drivers. So I think fuel saving is the way to go, especially in this series. We'll just have to try our best, I guess, in the next few races.
Well, in those next few races, you guys are obviously up at the top fighting for the championship. How much is that going into your brain here, and how much are you just approaching this maybe race by race?
I'm just going race by race. I personally don't really care too much about the championship. I just joined the league just to have some fun, and I enjoy driving GT4, so it gives me something to do on Monday nights, and the competition's really good. And it's a good time to have some fun.
Well, I know we have a good time watching it, my friend. Is there anybody you'd like to thank here for the running?
I'd like to thank Hydro Race for helping us out this year for our new sponsor, and then also you guys. You guys put on a great broadcast every time.
Well, when you guys put on a race like that, we're happy to do it. Justin, thanks for joining us here in the booth. We'll see you next week.
Take care.
All right, that was your second place finisher, Justin Ream, and that, unfortunately, is just about to wrap us up here for our Monday night coverage. But tune in next week, February 20th, as we head to Sebring, and the GR86s head to Alton Park. It's going to be an absolutely fantastic way to round out your season, and I, for one, am very, very much looking forward to it. But, as I said, it is about time to wrap up here tonight, so on behalf of myself, as well as all of us here on RaceSpotTV, including our amazing co-commentator and director and producer for tonight's events, Arjuna Campapati. Thank you so much for joining us for all of the racing action. And until we see you on the track, thanks for watching.